My mom's new psycho husband demands that we hand over our entire inheritance from my mom after she passed away recently, claiming that he deserves it way more than we do, despite the fact that he has literally made our lives a living nightmare for far too long. Here's what happened. So I've been reading these posts for ages, and I'm always shocked at the level of entitlement some people feel. This happened a few years ago to my sister and myself, and I figured I'd share some of the madness that comes my way as well. Mine and my sister's mother passed away whilst my sister and I were in our early 20s a few years ago. Unfortunately, our father is not involved, so we are very much a small family unit now. Prior to this, my mom did not make great decisions, especially regarding her chosen partner. After being the other woman for 7 years, he divorced his first wife and married my mom 6 months later, and my mom sadly passed away a year later while in her 40s. Now, her chosen partner, let's call him Richard because he's a complete jerk, was a completely disgusting loser. He had been leering and making comments to my sister and I for years, and my mom just didn't care as long as she was happy. She even told me once that she would choose him over me if it came to that. Now, this is to say that my sister and I despise this man with our very souls, and the only reason that we put up with him was for our mom. So our mom passes away, and we now ask ourselves, now what? Well, Richard is made executor for the estate as per my mom's will. He gets to live in her house until he dies, even though it's in mine and my sister's names. But any money is to be distributed to my sister and myself. And as you can probably tell, this was definitely not Richard's plan. I very luckily work in the same offices that were handling my mom's estate, and I get asked one day to sign some documents, and thank God I noticed that Richard had put his account as the payee rather than the trust for myself and my sister. This is also about $500,000 in our currency, by the way, that he has elected to pay out to himself with no instruction from the will, and have my sister and I sign it away under the guise of handling everything for us. Well, my sister and I immediately cut him off. We shut down the transfer and began the legal proceedings to have him removed as executor. My grandfather, who adored my mom to the ends of the earth and back, tried to speak to Richard to see why he would do this. But according to Richard, he deserved it. After putting up with my mom and her kids, he deserved to be paid, and he deserved to live in her house for free until he dies. This man, who was making suggestive comments to both me and my sister, who pressured my family into uncomfortable situations, who convinced my mother that my sister and I were just against them, felt that he deserved more than my sister and I. You know, the two people who had just lost their mother. Like, seriously, what's going on? Well, I made sure to put him through Hades. Lawyers meetings after lawyers meetings, which thankfully led to him moving out and give up any executorship, but he still ended up getting some money in exchange for disappearing from our lives. All I can hope is that his entitled self is just lonely, bitter, and miserable. Karma is the fact that he is divorced, a widow, and his kids won't even speak to him, and no amount of money is ever gonna fix that. Holy crap, imagine having somebody step into your life like this for less than a year, treat you and the rest of your family like crap, and then try to steal your inheritance from your mom. Like, this guy is definitely not your stepdad at all. This is just your mom's partner that unfortunately she flocked to for some stupid reason. Like, you don't deserve this kind of crap for a second. So I am so glad that you got him out of that house and out of your lives, because the alternative is you not reading those papers and unintentionally giving everything away to that weirdo, which would have been an absolute nightmare to deal with, especially considering how creepy this guy's been in the past. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I got offered a job at a fine dining restaurant, but I'm really turned off by the interview process that I went through, as I felt very dismissed and very rushed, leaving me wondering if this is the place I should work at or if I should run away and find something else. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to preface this by saying I only have 5 months experience at a casual chain restaurant, but I have been applying to jobs because I'm not making that much money, and one of those jobs was at a fine dining establishment. I receive a text giving me 2 interview times to choose from. I choose the date, which was 2 days later, and then come in the day of and was greeted by the hostess. She then asked me which manager got a hold of me, since there was currently no manager on duty. She then proceeds to tell me that the manager that messaged me was actually off that day, so the restaurant owner would interview me when he comes in. About 15 minutes later, he walks in, asks me for my name and a handshake, and then says he'll be right back with me. He starts doing other things with the employees and such, probably helping with opening procedures, but I'm honestly not really sure. He then comes back to me, apologizes, and starts speed walking to a conference conference room as I try to keep up behind him. He then tells me to take a seat and then began to ask me what job I was applying for, if I ever worked in fine dining, why I want to leave my current job, etc. Now overall, the interview felt very dismissive. He would interrupt my answers halfway through them because he had to answer a text message, and even got up at one point to scold his employees for letting the phone ring over 3 times. He literally screamed, "This isn't how we set up ourselves for success. The phone was ringing too long. Go check your sections." And mind you, there were no customers at the restaurant. They had just opened and everything was already set up. At this point, I'm feeling like this was almost a show to try and get me to leave, and I was wondering why I was even asked to interview in the first place. But he then tells me that training is for 2 weeks, and then asks me if I'm up for it and if I can do the classroom training since there's so much that I need to learn. I said I was willing to learn, but that I will get back to him by tomorrow. So honestly, is it worth going in to try and train? I really did not enjoy how the interview went, and the first impression was not good at all, but I need the money and fine dining seems the best way to go for it. So should I still go and see if this is like a right fit for me? Because at this point, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, in my opinion, this sounds like a nightmare waiting to happen. Like some people in the comments section have said this pretty well, but yeah, this guy sounds like an egomaniac. He probably wanted to set himself up as like this go-to boss who's like, oh yeah, we answer the phone on the first ring, not the third ring, and literally is interrupting you the entire time to pretend like he's answering a text message. Like, dude, come on, this is so stupid. And I think you're right to be like, oh yeah, this seems super performative, because that's exactly what it is in my opinion. He's making you wait to have your appointment. He's trying to micromanage and act like he's super involved in the restaurant, because I guarantee you that not only is this classroom training gonna suck, like you're probably not gonna learn anything valuable, but also I bet you anything you will never see this owner ever again. He will disappear into the shadows and collect his paycheck like he always does. So yes, if this was me, I would be running for the hills, because this job does not sound like a good one, and I'm sure you can do way better than this. My work colleague makes my life a living nightmare as they demand that I do the same work as everybody else, despite the fact that I have an injured back. So I decide to maliciously comply by getting a note from my doctor effectively banning me from any physical work for like 3 months, which then makes my colleague incredibly angry in the process. Here's what's happening. Okay, the background here is that during work, I had an incident that damaged my back. I had slipped discs that just didn't resolve, and subsequent additional damage due to unnatural wear and tear from compensating for poor posture. And so as a result, I had a fit note that cleared me for light duties. Now, most of my store team were and are incredibly supportive for my various limitations, and these guys are my family even years later. Depending on whether I was having a good day or a bad day, they would shuffle things around just to accommodate. We did that for everyone. We worked to accommodate whoever needed a helping hand. And I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't given special treatment. But my main difficulty is standing still, because when it comes to sitting or walking or even moving around, I am completely fine. On a good day, I can stand at the self-checkouts for a couple of hours with some pacing, but on a bad day, not at all. Good days, I can work delivery or backstock, but on bad days, I did decarding, facing up, I did putbacks, I did write-offs, and I was sitting on the tills. Well, unfortunately, one colleague was not very supportive. She considered it drastically unfair that everyone worked around my damage. She hated this so much that she went above everyone to file a complaint to the store manager that I should be forced to do self-checkouts as well. Sunday evening, a charming message was sent to the work WhatsApp group by one of the lower managers, stating to us that going forward, having paid here and there so you can't do self-checkouts or you can't do delivery will no longer be accepted. Unless you have a fit note, you can't refuse to do your task. I was scheduled to work on Monday, and thankfully it was a closing shift, so I had a narrow window to work with. On Monday at 8 o'clock, the stars aligned, because I was blessed to snag a telephone callback from my general practitioner. And if you're from the United Kingdom, then you'll know how hard it is to talk to a doctor, let alone even see one ever since the plague, because trust me, it's an absolute nightmare. Anyways, I explained the situation to her and she was furious, and with that, she emailed me an amended fit note to hand it into work. That afternoon, I cheerfully went in and handed it to the duty manager for the shift, who read it and then started laughing so uncontrollably before letting me get started. Basically, I had a 3-month note that prohibited me from any lifting, pulling, standing, or anything remotely strenuous whatsoever, and stated frequent regular breaks, effectively barring me from all tasks that I did on good days. Well, apparently that colleague blew a gasket. She filed a complaint with the area manager, who dismissed it, to which she told him she would go to human resources about this, as well as for his inaction, and was then promptly told that this would constitute harassment and disability discrimination if she insisted. But either way, I did exactly as she wanted, and honestly, it worked out in my favor, even if she's still pissed off in the process. Oh my gosh, good for you. This is really good to hear. First of all, anyone in their right mind would never be like, oh wow, this person's injured. I can't believe they can't do the same work as me. I'm gonna complain. Like, I'm willing to bet this colleague has no friends at this workplace and they absolutely are a pain to deal with. Because seriously, just be reasonable, dude. The original poster is not taking advantage of anybody. Like, come on. It's so weird to be accusatory towards someone who literally has done nothing wrong. They're just trying to make sure their back is in one piece and doesn't get injured. Like, dude, get a grip. So I personally love the way you maliciously complied and basically put this colleague right in their place, because they could do nothing about it and got pissed off in the process, which in my opinion is a reward in and of itself. Am I the jerk for refusing to cancel my annual leave that I'm literally just taking for myself so that I can relax and play some video games and watch some Netflix? Because right now, my girlfriend is very upset with me and doesn't understand why I'm doing this, even though I explained that I just wanted some time to relax. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I live in the United Kingdom and I get 30 days annual leave a year, and my girlfriend gets the same amount. So far, we've got 6 days booked for a holiday abroad and 5 days for some long weekends. And we both have to take at least 3 days over Christmas, as our places of work are closed. Now, all of this equals to about half of our leave. We've been talking about a possible holiday next January that will take maybe about 4 days in total. Apart from that, we have nothing planned, and our annual leave refreshes in April. I decided to take 2 to 3 days for a long weekend, as I hadn't had some time for myself in a while, and I thought I could do this twice over a couple of months. My girlfriend asked me what I planned to do with it, and I told her there were just some shows on Netflix and Prime that I wanted to catch up on, and there's a few video games that I've got that I just haven't had the chance to play. She said that I could easily do these after work, and that I don't need to take leave for it, but I just said I want to take the leave, and it's not like I'm using a lot of it. Well, she said that I was wasting it, and that leave could be used for a trip for us to do something instead of just sitting at home. But I told her that not every day of leave needs to be used together, and that I'm taking the days just to relax. She then just got annoyed and said I was limiting what we could do together, but I just pointed out that she was trying to limit the time I can relax. I then told her I would be taking the leave and then to drop it, and it was here that she said I was being unfair and not thinking about us. So am I the jerk for refusing to cancel my annual leave? Because right now I'm honestly super frustrated. Okay, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with what the original poster's doing. If they want to take time off and play video games and watch Netflix, then go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, the original poster's right. You don't need to plan everything out anytime you take leave, and it's gonna refresh in April anyway, so like, you might as well use it now. So no, the original poster has not done anything wrong, and I think they are completely justified in taking leave as they please. Am I overreacting after my wife broke an irreplaceable family gift of mine, all during a fight about her overspending on our budget? Because right now I'm struggling to forgive her, as she has literally refused to apologize for this. Here's what's going on. I'm a 27-year-old male, and I'm really struggling to forgive my wife after a fallout from a fight. It escalated to somewhere it really didn't need to go, and I just need an outside perspective. For some context, we were high school sweethearts, and we're married now for about 3 years. We're not only partners, but we are best friends. She knows me better than anyone else, and we've been through a lot together. Our relationship was never perfect. We've had our ups and downs, but usually we can communicate to common ground, and I never doubted that we were a team. But a constant fight lately is about budgeting. We don't exactly see eye to eye on upholding it. Circumstances have changed and the budget was more relaxed before, but it simply had to be tightened because of the increase in rent. Now, the budget isn't unreasonable, and it keeps us in the boundaries of living within our means. But overall, we're just making sure we have everything covered first, all before spending elsewhere. It's not so different than the system we already had, but now that the budget is actually locked in, my wife has issues sticking with it. The other day, she went over the budget on an impulse purchase, and it put us in a bind on a bill, and I only found out what happened when I saw the deduction. She said she couldn't resist the deal and splurged a bit. She thought she could pay it back before I noticed and before the other bill was due, and that simply didn't make me feel better about any of this. I then told her that I wish she would have just communicated with me since it went over our budget, but she said she wasn't a child who needed permission and that she intended to return the funds. We then got into a fight, and it was the biggest one we had had in a while. Now, I had this pottery piece that was a gift from my great-grandma. We were very close, and she handcrafted it for me. Well, my wife broke it during our fight. She literally slapped it right off its shelf. I was too far away to grab it, and she never even attempted to. And as you can guess, the pottery was smashed to pieces, and I swear she did it on purpose. I watched her make eye contact with it before swinging her hand, and I feel feel like she was angry at me and retaliated in the moment, and I'm now really hurt. The pottery was irreplaceable. My wife knew how much it meant to me, but she hasn't taken accountability or apologized. She only keeps saying that it was an accident, and now she's being extra affectionate verbally and physically. But you know what? I simply haven't been receptive. I know to someone else it was just pottery, but it meant a lot more to me. I don't want to believe that my wife broke it on purpose, but I can't shake the possibility that she did. So I honestly just don't know. I'm struggling to forgive her. I don't want to build resentment or fight anymore. So am I overreacting, or is there any way that I'm in the right? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, I want you to understand that yeah, she did that on purpose 100%. She looked you in the eye and smacked that specifically off the shelf just to hurt you. She knows how much that meant to you, and she knows that it's something that was irreplaceable. So she smacked that off the shelf on purpose just so she could hurt you in some kind of way. And this is all because she's overspending. Like, dude, think about it for a second. This is so messed up. And the part that would drive me crazy is that she did not even apologize. She's trying to be verbally and physically affectionate. But it's like, dude, not even like an apology of some kind? Really? You're just gonna act like this didn't happen and try and be on your merry way? Like, that is unacceptable behavior in my opinion. That would drive me up a wall, and I just don't care who you are. So no, you're not overreacting here. I would have a very hard time forgiving someone if they're not willing to apologize and admit fault, especially something that was a family heirloom of some kind that you just cannot replace. Because in my opinion, she absolutely did that on purpose. My close friend of 5 years dropped out of my wedding out of nowhere and is now dropped off the map and completely ghosted me. And right now I'm wondering if I did something wrong, because at this point I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so this is all a bit complicated and I'm still very hurt and confused about losing a friend, so bear with me. I met my friend about 6 years ago, and while we were not besties, I would say that we were close. We went on vacation together and we shared a room. She was going to attend my wedding, and about 2 weeks before the date, when I sent out details about the bachelor party, she texted me and said, "I am no longer attending your wedding." And that was all. I asked if something was wrong or if she wanted to talk about something, but I got no response. Now, many of my guests were confused that she wasn't there and asked me later, but the only explanation I could come up with was the following. About a month before everything happened, I was going to buy one of her courses. It's like this marketing course, and I wanted it for a while, but I had to save up for it as it ran for about $1,000. Well, I guess the pricing changed, and they now had a sales call to get the course instead of a sign-up version it used to be, and the course ended up being like 3 times the price now. Now, I still signed up, albeit feeling unsure about it, but the sales rep didn't show up to our follow-up call that night, and afterwards they hadn't even responded or sent full materials in 48 hours. So at that point, I just asked for a refund. Now, I was absolutely professional at any point of that conversation with the sales rep, so it honestly still confused me, because I never expected me wanting a refund to affect the relationship to the point that someone would basically ghost me. Well, I shared this story with 2 of my friends that asked about it, and everyone says it sounds off and how sometimes people just change, but it didn't really help me understand or make peace with what happened. I assumed that even if something hit a nerve, someone who calls themselves my friend would at least just ask me about it, and never would I have assumed that someone who was attending my wedding would be able to cut me out like that no problem. I'm still debating if I should say anything at some point, because I would apologize if I knew what it was all about, because right now I'm honestly so confused and I just don't know what to do. Okay, first of all, who in their right mind is taking a $3,000 marketing course, dude? That really does sound like a scam in my opinion, and I think you dodged a train. Like, what's going on right now? But honestly, I think this absolutely is the reason why this friend backed out and said, "We can't be friends anymore." Like, even $1,000 for that kind of course is way too much. Like, what's going on right now? You could probably find a cheaper course that's like way easier to access than whatever crap this lady's trying to sell you. Like, what's going on, dude? Because this really sounds like some kind of like multi-level marketing scheme. It doesn't seem legit, and it really does seem like they only wanted to be friends with you as some kind of like transactional thing. So yeah, I know you might be like upset about this friend walking out and ghosting you, but I think you clearly dodged a train that she was trying to like set up on this track for a few years now, as this course of hers doesn't sound very legit, and I think you're better off without her in your life. The entitled father of a classmate gets pissed off at me when I block his number after he calls me 21 times in a single day as he was trying to figure out what my scores were for a national medical entrance exam, which is honestly one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in my entire life. Here's how it all went down. Okay, to start things out, I participated in India's medical entrance exam for undergrads based on class 11 and 12 syllabus. I joined a coaching center for prep and only made casual acquaintances, mostly for notes. The coaching teaching was far from most homes, so parents usually just pick their kids up. And I guess this is how one girl's father ended up asking for my number. Now, mind you, we were just classmates and we barely even spoke. Anyways, right after the exam, this man calls me up and asks me what the score range is that I'm expecting. I then just gave him a rough estimate since I was really not that confident. I had boards and this exam around the same time, and I was focusing more on the boards than I was the medical exam. He then starts full-on lecturing me about wasting my parents' money and time. Now, I was already stressed and disappointed, so I just zoned out and hung up after saying okay just a few times on the phone. Well, a couple months later, when the medical exam results came out, he called me 7 times in the morning, 7 times in the afternoon, and 7 times in the evening. And the next day, he called me 4 more times. And you know what? I ignored all of it and just finally blocked him. Well, his daughter then steps in and messaged me asking if I blocked her father. And I said yes because he was being extremely weird about my results. She then said it was disrespectful and that they just wanted to know my marks and which college I'm getting into. She kept pushing to know my information, so I finally said no and just blocked her too. Honestly, I do not get why some people think they have the right to question random students about their exams, like there's some kind of school authority or something like that. It boils my blood every time I think about it, and honestly, I don't regret blocking them for a single second. Okay, this is really weird to me because what father in their right mind would be like, okay, random person that goes to this study course with my daughter, tell me about your exams, and then proceeds to call you over a dozen times in a single day. At that point, this had better be some kind of emergency because I'm gonna lose it if I ever pick up that phone. Even calling 5 times is too much for me. Dude, what are you doing? This guy hit you up 21 times in a single day. That's almost once an hour, dude. Give it a rest. And then for his daughter to step in and be like, wow, you blocked my obnoxious father. Let me take his place by also being obnoxious. Holy crap, I don't know if you guys have a thing for the original poster or not, but you need to take a step back and pump the brakes, bro. So yeah, this guy was out of his mind and I don't blame you for blocking him because his behavior was super creepy and super entitled.
Epic Santa Claus humiliates Karen in front of a live audience for bullying 9-year-old boy with a speech impediment. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I work in an aquarium, and during the month of December, Santa visits and swims around the tank and talks to kids. It's an awesome thing, and something different from the normal stuff around here. This event happened a week before Christmas 2019. So when Santa comes to the aquarium to swim with the sharks, he brings his elves with him to help talk to the children. I was one of these elves this year. My first year and maybe my only year because of this single woman. So we were doing our normal thing and I was on mic talking to kids and translating child speak for Santa to hear. Keep in mind he's in the tank and we use special microphones and earpieces so everyone can communicate and it's projected in the room. In between children, my manager comes up and explains that there's a young boy. He's mute and he just wants a picture. I'm like, yeah, sure, anything. I was honestly just happy to be there and making $1 more than my normal pay. So we get to the young boy. He's 9 and just stared as I directed him and his mom to Scuba Santa. Mom takes the mic and talks to Santa. Hi Santa, this is Boy. He doesn't say much, so is it okay if we could get a picture?
Of course.
And he then poses for the picture. I'm standing off to the side out of the way of the picture, checking the time, as we had to get Santa a break. Air tanks only hold so much air. As I'm getting ready to call the dive team to get the new tank ready, there's a pop in my earpiece. I look up to the microphone and Boy is holding it. Mom steps back towards me and we all just watch. At this point, there's a small line forming, but we weren't worried about it. This was going to be the last child before the 5-minute break. Santa, hi. For Christmas, I want a truck. The entire room goes silent, and Mom starts crying before looking and explaining that he hasn't spoken over 6 months. So I let him ramble to Santa for a bit. Most is lost because it was rambling, but Boy was loving it, and no one in line seemed to mind. It really was a Christmas miracle of some sorts. Enter the entitled woman. She was in her 30s with her friends wanting a picture with Santa. Whatever, I didn't care. Boy finished his babble and went to say goodbye. This woman yells over the crowd,
If he isn't gonna say real words, get him off the mic.
My other elf friend was going to confront her as I was mic'd in, and whatever I would say would have been everywhere. But before they could get to her, Santa's voice comes over the speakers. Now, fun fact about this particular Santa is that he was a no-nonsense kind of guy in the first place. And in this instant, he became my best friend.
Why don't you shut your pie hole?
Now, because he hears this means she said it loud enough for my mic to pick it up and project it across the room. She was so red, but stayed in line, and Santa finishes with the boy. I start my signal to Santa to let him know that he needs to go up for a new tank. Santa, Mrs. Claus has some new cookies she wants you to try. Now, folks, Santa will be back after a short milk and cookie break. Normally, people agree and it's no big deal. We play games with the kids, sing a couple songs, and before you know it, Santa's back. But today, this woman was not having it.
Oh, come on, you have a whole line here and he's just leaving?
He'll be right back, I promise. And then I go into a song. This woman threw a fit, screaming, cursing us out, making a real scene, and I had left my mic on. But while the song was playing, it wasn't projecting her, but Santa could still hear her screaming. Eventually, he came back and finally got to her in line. I reluctantly let her go up and I step out of the way for a picture after she told me that if I was anywhere near the picture, she would have my head. I had security on standby and they were ready to walk her out because I don't want to deal with that crap. Not in my aquarium. And the best thing ever happened.
Now, hold on there. Are you the woman who yelled at the little boy?
Silence. Like no one moved.
And threw a fit when I had to go try Mrs. Claus's new cookie recipe?
She just sat there staring at him.
I'll have you know that makes you number 1 on the naughty list. We need to be compassionate and nice to others. My elves here are just doing what I've instructed them to do and you're yelling at them. That's not in the spirit of the holidays. You need to apologize to everyone you've been mean to, and then go to the end of the line and wait again. Until that is done, I'm not taking a picture with a naughty person.
I was hyped. This woman was a jerk. She ended up storming away screaming for a manager. I believe she found one, but was escorted out with no picture. Boy got to meet Santa out of the tank and got a super special picture with him and all his elves. He's a regular at the aquarium and likes to show us new words he's learned. It's amazing, and the diver is my favorite dude forever and always. What kind of grown woman is going to make this much of a fuss trying to see Santa Claus? It's funny. With all those kids around, she's the only one acting like a spoiled brat. Sorry, lady, people need to take breaks sometimes. And if Santa's having a special moment with a kid, you don't get to just butt in and shout out. That's not your call to make. That's up to Santa and the elves. If they want to give the kid a couple extra minutes, that's their call. You getting all worked up and upset like that is just embarrassing, and I'm glad Santa called you out. This woman needed a little bit of public humiliation. Unfortunately, it sounds like it didn't really have the effect it should have. The funniest part is after making all that fuss, she still didn't get her picture. Guess she'll just have to take a trip to the mall. A foreign exchange student was bullying my sister, so I got her sent back to her own country. My sister was bullied relentlessly in high school for something she had literally zero control over, a certain part of her anatomy. Without going into details, she felt terrible about it, and it more or less ruined her life as an insecure 15-year-old girl. The girl responsible for most of the cruel bullying, and the one who gave her a particularly cruel nickname related to her physical issue, was called Nadia. Nadia was a foreign exchange student at our school. Nadia was beautiful, and she was cruel, and she didn't give a crap about anyone but herself. I wasn't Miss Popularity myself, but I had to protect my sister from having her life ruined, and I felt a very strong urge to get back at her tormentors. They say to kill a dragon with many heads, you gotta cut off the main head. So that's what I did. I learned that the father of Nadia was very conservative. Her whole family back home was. So I started spreading rumors about her being very promiscuous and ensured these rumors reached the family she was staying with. This apparently caused her some trouble, but I wasn't done. I threw a party one night when my parents were gone. I invited Nadia, who gladly came as I was a cooler older girl somehow, and she never said no to a chance to get hammered. Because yes, there was a lot of liquor. I made sure of that. Took pictures of everyone drinking and having fun. That same night, when everyone left, I put it on my Facebook. I tagged Nadia on it as she was my Facebook friend. She had this option turned on where everything she's tagged in is automatically allowed on her timeline. So a picture of her stupidly drunk and very skimpily dressed made its way onto her page. Because of it being in the middle of the night, she must not have noticed until the next day in the morning. So it stayed on for hours. But due to her parents' time zone being vastly different, I was sure they would see it before she had a chance to take it down. They did. I wasn't there to see the fallout, obviously, but she was gone the next week from school and flown back to her home country. Apparently, her parents had to save her from being corrupted or something. something. So she was gone, and my sister safe from ridicule. As word of my involvement spread, and let's just say people didn't really want to mess with her after seeing how far I was willing to go to protect my little sister. Wow, you had this all planned out and everything apparently. We don't have the details of what her sister was being bullied for, but regardless, you shouldn't be bullied for something that you have no control over. I completely understand our original poster's need to want to lash out at this girl, if it was having this big of an impact on her sister's life. We all know how high school kids can get, and what kind of world that is. I'm sure it really sucked for her sister to have to go through that. I will say, this is pretty extreme in terms of getting revenge. We don't know what Nadia's life was like back in her home country, and we may have just sent her to a pretty crappy situation. But I guess that's not really on our original poster's list of concerns. Entitled Karen thinks she's insulting my new engagement ring, so I decided to make her feel just a little bit jealous. My fiance and I had been dating for 4.5 years. In that time, we've bought a house together, adopted doggies together, and I put him through pharmacy school, and we fell even more in love. He's an amazing man, and I'm crazy about him. Imagine my excitement that after braving all of the ups and downs and watching life unfold as a team, that he proposed. I was overjoyed, and through tears of happiness, I said yes. It's a larger, slightly blush pink amethyst stone with a halo of topaz around it set in rose gold. I loved it. It was perfect. The next day, I was attending a baby shower for my best friend in my hometown. I trekked my way there, and even though I tried to downplay the engagement because I wanted it to be about her, she made a mini announcement because I knew people who were there. Most people did a little congrats type thing, which was nice, except for her cousin. This girl, let's call her Amy, is super religious. Actually, everyone from my hometown is super religious, and I appreciate their faith, but I didn't like her judgment. She's voiced her opinions before about how people shouldn't live together unless they're married and all that jazz. So when she sauntered over, she took my hand in hers and scrutinized the ring. She more or less said that at least he was making an honest woman out of me and that he had taken too long to propose. Then she kind of scrunched her nose at my ring and asked what kind of stone it was, with a little snobby half smile on her face. She also said that it was generic that he would ask me now that he's graduating, because that's what everyone does. I don't know what came over me. I love my ring and I've never been mean to this girl, but I've known Amy for a while now and she's always been like this. She likes to say what terrible decisions other people have made and how she always puts Jesus first. So that's why her life has turned out so well. She says it's because she's followed his plan, which ultimately led to her getting married ridiculously young to a guy who really isn't good for her at all and just leeches off of her. She had to put herself through school and work while he would go on long stints out of the country to find himself and follow God's path, which I think really meant bang other women. She married him in the middle of a college year before one of the times he left. I suspect to entice him to come back and have commitments here. Well, I went for it. I said, oh, he waited until he knew he could provide for me. I think it's a pink diamond. Her whole face changed from smug to envious. She practically threw my hand down and mumbled how happy she was for me. I looked up how big my petty lie had been later, only to find out that yes, pink diamonds are actually a thing, and the teeny ones are like $10,000. But hey, she doesn't have to know how poor we are. We're rich with unconditional love and loyalty, and that's why I'm happy to call him my future husband. I don't need that jerk's approval. Good for you, honestly. This woman needed to be brought down a peg or two. Whether she knows that's really the case or not doesn't matter. As long as she walked away from the conversation feeling just a little bit worse, I think you did your job. At the end of the day, it's not about the extravagance of the ring. The ring is merely symbolic. It's about the relationship between you guys and how you guys have made that commitment together. There's nothing some random entitled Karen can do to take that away from you, especially the day after you receive the ring. You best believe you're going to be coming in hot if anyone tries to throw any insults your way. Karen insults me throughout the entire flight, so I get back at her with a little bit of pettiness. This is something that I'm surprisingly proud of and easily the most petty thing I've done in my life. About a year ago, I was on a short domestic flight, around 3 to 4 hours. I was seated towards the front of the flight and lined up to board when they called for my group. I saw I had a window seat, and as I saw where I was sitting, I noticed an older woman in the aisle seat of my row, and who I learned to be her daughter, maybe late 40s, in the middle seat. I let them know I was sitting next to the window and apologized for making them get up so I could sit down. The older lady didn't seem to understand what I was saying at first, and she just kept smiling at me, until her daughter told her to get up because they have to let me get past them. The older woman got up and told me not to worry about it, but her daughter seemed extremely annoyed when she told her to move for me. I didn't think much of it and apologized once more for being too big to fit past them without having to get up, and once again, the older lady gave me a big smile and told me not to worry about it. Unfortunately, the daughter was nowhere near as happy as her mother. This is the point where the daughter starts to fire off comments to her mother that were directed at me, ticked off at the fact that I have a window seat and I should have been on the plane before them, so they didn't have such a hassle to get back up when they were already seated. Her mother, though, didn't seem to pay her any mind. I just ignored her tirade. I did feel guilty that I made them, especially the older lady with the smile, get up for me. But when the daughter saw her mother was ignoring her, she started to look for anyone around us that she could complain about me to. She even asked the flight attendant for a glass of wine because the silly moron next to her had stressed her out. I put my headphones in and occasionally would pause the movie I was watching on my phone to check if she was still complaining about me. Now, I usually have to put up with comments and slight insults for work. I've been called a lot worse before, and honestly, being called a silly moron is more humorous than anything. So I was just going to let it slide. That's when I noticed as we reached flying altitude that she was trying to see out the window to look down on the city we were leaving. Immediately, I hunched myself forward to block her from seeing out the window and kept watching my movie. Initially, I planned to block the window for about 20 minutes, but 20 became 30, 30 became 45, and I thought, what the heck, I'm just gonna fully commit to hunching in front of the window for the entire flight. I saw her getting annoyed, but I blasted my volume, held in my pee, skipped the mid-flight snack and drinks, and continued to block the window until we landed. It was definitely worth it. Is it really that big a deal that you had to stand up for 2 seconds to let someone shuffle past you? That's kind of the way it works. Have you ever been to a movie theater or anything like that? Do you get that upset with the person who needs to go past? That's the way they have to go. Sorry it's an inconvenience, but you gotta just kinda roll with it. You're not doing yourself or anyone else any favors by getting all upset about it. It's not gonna change the situation. Just shut up and move on with your life. I told my roommate that her anorexia is not my problem. We're both 23-year-old females. It's been getting close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit where we live, so I've been turning on the AC when I get home. I also work a physically intense outdoor job, so I come home really sweaty and exhausted from the heat. The apartment will stay cool enough for me to fall asleep, but then later on, I'll wake up in the middle of the night completely drenched in sweat. I'll then get up and find out my roommate has switched the AC off while I'm sleeping. This really upsets me because it's been making me really dehydrated and tired to begin with from not sleeping well, and it's been impacting my work. She's unemployed right now, so I thought she might have been hung up about the power bill. When I finally talked to her about it, I explained that I'm already very sensitive to heat to begin with, and that because we're fortunate enough to have AC, I want to enjoy it when I get home after a long day at work, and that the heat is causing problems for me. I even offered to foot some of her share of the power bill if she was really that concerned about it, but then she said that she turns it off because the apartment gets too cold. I should add that our AC is set at 70 degrees and has never moved lower than that. I told her that she could just use some blankets or put on a sweater if it was really bothering her, because the heat is unbearable. She then countered by saying that because she's in recovery from anorexia, she's really sensitive to cold and that I'm not prioritizing her needs. I then responded by saying, I'm sympathetic to your situation, but that's your problem and not mine. And it's starting to have a negative impact on me, and we need to find some middle ground here, because I can't take my skin off when it gets too hot. She then got extremely upset and angry and told me that I was being an ableist and insensitive. I'm kind of bothered by this because I've also had struggles with eating disorders in the past. So am I the jerk here? I will say you maybe could have said it with a little more sensitivity. I get that you're just summing it up for a Reddit article here, but it does sound like it came across a little blunt. I totally agree with the premise of what you're saying. I agree. Being too hot is way more uncomfortable than being too cold, because there's nothing you can do about it. There's only so many layers of clothes you can take off that is still socially acceptable. Whereas if you're too cold, you could easily throw on another layer. So I 100% agree with you that you should be able to have the AC on and that she can just put on a sweater. It's just the way that you delivered it. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. My entitled friends cut me off after I stopped being their designated driver. I, female, have 3 friends from college: Macy, Tom, and Neela. We're all in our mid-30s now. We usually get together once a month to have dinner despite work and family obligations. 6 months ago, I had to stand up to everyone about splitting the bill evenly, because everyone else orders and eats appetizers and desserts, and everyone else drinks copious amounts of alcohol every time we get together. I typically eat a main and drink water. I started checking menus in advance and only bring enough cash to cover my bill plus tip, and would forget my card at home, and eventually sternly told them that I was no longer willing to pay an additional $50 to $100 every time we went out to cover their appetizers, desserts, and drinking habits. Well, they all agreed, because I wasn't drinking anything but water, that I should be the designated driver, which I initially agreed to because I was just happy that they eventually stopped arguing with me about splitting the bill. But at the time, I told them firmly if any of them ever threw up in my car, that would be the end of it. Last month, Tom nearly threw up in my car. The only reason he didn't is because I pulled over and pulled him out of the car and onto the pavement instead. I sent a group text the next morning stating that I was no longer going to be the designated driver, and everyone complained that Tom only almost threw up in my car. I again refused and told them that next month they either had to limit their drinking so they could drive, or they had to find their own ride. Last weekend, I reminded everyone I wasn't driving anyone home. No one limited their intake at all, and by the end of the night, they were too drunk to even handle paying their bill. I went up and asked for my bill separately, paid, and walked out without saying goodbye. Tom's wife had to have her mother watch their 2 kids while she had to come down, covering their bills and give Macy and Neela rides home. And Tom and Macy both threw up in her car. I was getting hateful calls and texts all week, telling me I have to pay for Tom's wife's car cleaning, and pay his mother-in-law for watching the kids. Macy and Neela have been calling me all kinds of names for abandoning them. But I snapped that they were all 3 sheets to the wind even after being told last month I wasn't driving them anymore. Tom eventually called to yell at me that if I didn't split the bill and if I wasn't the designated driver, then what use was I? I asked if that was how he treated his wife, Macy, or Neela, if they were only allowed to be around if they were useful, because here I thought we were all just enjoying one another's company, since I certainly wasn't gaining anything useful from them spending hundreds of dollars funding their eating and drinking habits and then wasting my gas to drive their drunk butts home. I was blocked and none of them want to speak to me now, and I just need to know if I'm the jerk here. No, you're not being a jerk by standing up for yourself. I think you've honestly done yourself a huge favor here. You found out exactly what your value was to these friends of yours. Apparently, you were just a ride home, or a way for them to save a few bucks on their meal. It was supposed to be about just spending time together, but it seems like they really wanted more out of you than that. And I agree that considering you weren't getting a whole lot back in return, that kind of treatment is not fair at all. It's something that needed to be addressed, and now that it has, this is how they're choosing to react. That gives you a pretty good idea what kind of friends they are. Neighbor calls my disabled kid the R word for walking funny, so I destroy her dreams of becoming a cop. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. For a bit of background, my next door neighbor was a college student. She lived with our actual neighbor, her boyfriend. Typical crazy college kid. Weekend parties, drinking on her patio at all hours of the night, and weird hours. You know the drill. I figured she was trying to experience college life, so why not? You do you, lady. Anyways, one summer night last year, she was sitting out on her back patio with her girlfriends doing their drunk thing. I'm out wrapping up on some stuff with my toddler daughter. She at the same time had a medical thing going on that caused her to walk a little weird. Nothing life-altering and something that would heal over time. She did have a weeble waddle to her, especially when running. Sometimes she would fall right over. She was out running around with the dog and the ladies next door were waving and telling her how cute she was. All good. We go back inside and I hand her off real quick to the husband. I want to go to the bedroom real fast to change the sheets for bed later. I hurry up. Now, to set the scene, my bedroom is the closest to the patio next door. The windows are open because it gets super hot in there even with AC during the day and the lights off. I can do this by the light of the hallway, I figure. I can clearly hear what they're talking about next door. Did you see the way she was walking? What a little R word. My little R word, my little R word. Singing the cheerful tone of My Little Pony. I guess because that was what my kid had been wearing. This was followed by sounds I suppose my neighbor felt a mentally challenged child would make, and uproarious laughter. No, you did not. They didn't realize anyone could hear them, but I had the lights flipped on and was at the window and shouting in record time. Stay right there, lady! Absolute dead silence as they realize someone heard them. I come flying down the stairs where I'm intercepted by my husband that has no idea what I was screaming about. At this point, I'm so mad that I just burst into tears when telling him. We both decide it would be better to wait until morning to confront them. Everyone next door is wasted and there's no way of telling just how many people she has over. Besides, when we looked outside, it seemed like they might have packed it in for the night. Not long after this, we all go to bed. My husband was outside having a last cigarette before sleep. Next door jerk had sent her boyfriend out to put the fire pit out. Guess she was way too chicken to do it herself as she usually would. My husband and he were talking. Her boyfriend. That got crazy earlier, huh? Well, your girlfriend did make fun of a child, so understanding that as her parents, we're upset shouldn't be too hard. Ah, man, you know how girls are that age when they're drinking. My neighbor happens to date much younger women. No judgment, but it's not a defense for how they acted. They say stuff and don't mean it. All little girls are like that when drunk. I've drank with a lot of women, and have never heard of one of them making fun of a kid behind their back. A 2-year-old no less. So yeah, that doesn't fly with me. Look dude, I don't want drama, just let it go. Sure, just let your girlfriend know we're waiting for her heartfelt apology. Whatever. Needless to say, boyfriend is going to go with whatever keeps getting him laid. Not a drop of compassion even though he's a nurse. Fricking awesome. Hope you don't work in the children's ward, jerk. My husband came in after that. I waited for a week to confront her about it because I thought that what she did was so shameless that she would surely feel bad. Nope. I happened to be outside one day watering when she was coming back from wherever. Gave her the stare down. All she could muster was, got a problem? Do something about it, before making her way inside. Turns out that little miss My Poop Doesn't Stink wanted to be a policewoman in our town. How do I know? They sent a letter to people on our street to feel her out before accepting her into their program. Just a standard questionnaire asking about our dear neighbor friend. Do you have an opinion why or why not your jerk neighbor would make a good officer of the law? Why yes. Yes I do. I wrote an essay, you guys. Complete with photos of her lovely patio covered in cans and bottles from the night before. Their dogs having to sit outside in the pouring rain all day. I guess animal control is too busy around here for that kind of thing. I always got a "we'll look into it" response. How do you feel about someone on your force that makes fun of kids with handicaps, who could possibly show up to work drunk? I sent it back in and just forgot about it. It was petty, yes, but it felt so good. I say this because last night I heard her crying to one of her buddies about how she couldn't seem to break into the local police force, which had been the whole reason she had pursued her major in college. She isn't sure what to do now. Now, I'm not sure if my letter did it. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I'm not sure if they tell you why you aren't being considered other than you're not. In that moment though, I felt vindicated. Screw you, you soulless jerk. Hope these jokes at my kid's expense was worth it. Seriously, you have to fall pretty low to make fun of a disabled 2-year-old. Like, that's literally on the top 5 list of crappiest things you can do. And this person thought that they were a fine enough member of society to actually earn a place as a cop, but treat people like that? I don't think so. I didn't know that this was a thing that they send out this mailer to your neighbors, but yeah, probably a good idea. If anyone's seen some crap going on with these people, it's gonna be the neighbors. It definitely seems to be like a good idea. I mean, hey, it helped them catch one of the bad eggs this time. I got my teacher suspended for refusing to let me use the restroom. To preface, I have Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. This qualifies me as disabled, and so starting when I first got sick in high school, I was required accommodations by state law. Being disabled was hard and pretty complicated, since after being diagnosed with IBD, I started getting various other health issues, ranging from kidney issues to neurological issues to fibromyalgia. My school was very reasonable, and even after missing 3 months when I was first diagnosed, I still got all my credits. The following year I was doing alright. Then second semester, one of my teachers left and the new one was a complete monster. She refused to teach with the textbook and just used Wikipedia instead. She wouldn't give us any tests or practice for the AP exam we were due to take. I was very frustrated and felt unprepared. She absolutely loathed me since I had a little pink pass that allowed me to take my meds in class, go to the school nurse as needed, and have unlimited restroom breaks. She thought I was a disruption. I would do my best to wait until she was done talking unless I was in too much pain, but she would always roll her eyes and groan at me. One day, I had just gotten in from a doctor's appointment and rushed into her class. I asked to go to the restroom and said I'd be right back. She said no. Well, asking is just a formality. All of the teachers get emails about the disabled students and know about their accommodations. So I told her, I need to go to the restroom, I'm going. As I left, she groaned something about me always wasting class time and faking it. I picked up my stuff and took it with me. I went to the restroom. Then I went downstairs to my dean's office. I signed in, and when he came out to get me, I told him about her attitude and how she refused to let me use my accommodations. So I came here. I simply told him that they should let her know that she's required to let me leave the class for a reason, and I have medical paperwork to back that up. He apologized profusely and called the teacher. He told her that he was sending a substitute to her room and he wanted to speak with her. Then he called for a substitute teacher on his walkie-talkie. She arrived at his office looking very displeased to say the least. He sent me out of the room and I waited in the lobby for, I think, 20 minutes. Once she left, he had her stop at the desk to fill out some paperwork. He brought me back into the office to fill out paperwork as well about what had happened. A few other students who had heard what had happened came in as witnesses, and after that, she was gone for 3 weeks. To my knowledge, she was suspended because she opened them up to a potential lawsuit. Blatantly denying a disabled student their accommodations is against the law here, and the school didn't tolerate it one bit. I will admit I do feel a little bit bad, but I don't take any crap when it comes to my body and my diseases. No, this teacher was just on a power trip. They didn't like the feeling of not having control over one of their students. Sorry, too bad. This is a medical issue. You're required to let me do what I need to do. And the fact that our poster wasn't allowed to go despite their health issues really shows what kind of person this teacher is. I would have done the exact same thing. You handled it the way it should have been handled. You went to the appropriate authority and they took the action needed. Not gonna hold anything against you on this one. Entitled mother demands absolute silence in the whole apartment complex. So I live with my parents and brothers in an apartment complex with 11 other units. There would be noise that would go around, but all neighbors don't take much notice or mind it very much, since after all, it is an apartment complex with families living their lives. So about 3 years ago, entitled mother, a 78-year-old woman, complained to us accusing us of slamming our door, to which I can assure you we weren't because our door has a dampener. This went on for a few months, until she wrote in chalk, Unit X, stop slamming your door. We tried to complain about it to the corporate body, but since entitled mother was a part of it, nothing was done. She consistently complained about the noises of a mother and son talking in normal speaking voices while walking out of the building, as well as our door and another family living upstairs who were raising a baby. A bit of a side note here, she tried to whinge and say,
We're old people. We don't want noise.
But you decided to move near a busy road and a railway corridor. How can you expect no noise? Or better yet, blame us for it. This woman's daughter was so sick of her mother's exacerbated intolerance for room-level noise that she moved out. One day after returning from school, I decided to do some chores and take out the trash. And upon re-entering the building, she wrote in chalk on the wall again, accusing me of slamming the door and giving a specific timestamp to when I came home from school. Again, we tried to report her, but she pulled strings to have it dismissed. After accosting a number of families and parents with children living in the same complex for noise, and many failed attempts at trying to report her for harassment, all the families have taken it upon ourselves to make plenty of noise. A dad and his children love screaming into the corridor where she lives and ding-dong ditching her before running back into their apartments, with the direction of their dad. A mother and a daughter cough loudly when walking through the lobby, and my family, we make sure to slam the front door hard and loud, and speak loudly when we're entering the building. If she wants to complain about noise, we'll give her noise. She began to single out and harass the mother and daughter, to which they responded, "There are a few families living here. If you don't want noise, then why don't you move into a nursing home? I know quite a few." Entitled mother is still persisting with these complaints today, to which she's not getting what she wants. And I think the jerk should just take the advice on the nursing home. This lady's clearly bitter about something. You don't get that mad over every little thing when your life is perfect. She's got other issues going on that she's not happy about, and she's taking it out on everyone else around her. I understand the want for quiet, but yeah, you're in an apartment complex. There's gonna be other people around making noise. And guess what? People have kids. Kids make noise. While I don't really think our original poster is necessarily making the situation better by doing this, they are having some fun at least along the way. Men seem to think I don't know how to do my job, all because of my gender. It always seems to be old men who have a problem receiving help from a woman. Roughly 10 years ago, I worked for Geek Squad. If you don't know what that is, the uniform is a shirt and tie. Girls can wear skirts, but I'm not that kind of girl, so I wore pants. In other words, it doesn't look normal to see a woman in a shirt and tie. Anyway, this old fart came in first thing in the morning because old people get up at the crack of dawn. He jokingly asked to speak to one of the geeks. I was the opener and the only one there at the time. Also the only woman in the department. I asked how I can help him and he got a serious face and said,
"No, sweetie, I need to speak to a man."
Never having been one to take anybody's crap, I replied, "Well, sweetie, I'm the only one here, so you can tell me your problem or you can come back later." He left. I've since moved on from electronics repair and am now a licensed electrician. About a year ago, I ran a service call with a coworker and my boss. The issue was that a fan that another electrician had installed would cause the recessed lights in the room to dim when the fan was turned on. This other guy had told the homeowner that we didn't wire the house correctly, hence why my boss was there too. The other electrician lived in the same development, so the homeowner called him over while we were there. We all introduced ourselves and he shook everybody's hand, except mine, just kinda pretended I wasn't there. More recently, I ran a service call with the same coworker to, you guessed it, an old man's house. I have my screwdriver and wire strippers in my back pocket and my impact on my hip. I put booties on over my muddy work boots to enter his house. While we were working, he started to ask about plumbing questions. My coworker was quick to say he doesn't know anything about plumbing, but I used to work for an HVAC plumbing company, so I know some stuff. I explained the purpose of the bladder tank on his water heater, and this man had the audacity to then ask me,
"So are you just hanging out for the day?"
I told him, yeah. I decided to venture outside of the kitchen for a change. I don't understand why people think that what genitals you have determines what knowledge you're able to consume. Believe it or not, just because you don't have anything hanging between your legs doesn't mean you can't be an electrician or something like that. At the end of the day, our original poster has the peace of mind that she knows something that they didn't. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to call her in the first place. Maybe she needs to point that out to them once in a while. I announced my wife's pregnancy in front of my sister, who can't have kids. My wife and I have a 3-year-old son. and we're expecting our second child next year. Both our children were conceived via IVF. We spent years trying for our first with no success, and it took 4 cycles of IVF to have him. It was brutal on my wife. We both felt like trying for biological children was the way to go for us. We tried naturally for a second child after our first turned 1, but had 0 luck. We were left with the money for 1 cycle of IVF, which we decided to pursue if we didn't have any luck naturally, which we didn't. Around a year ago, my wife and I were gearing up to start the ball rolling on our IVF journey, when my sister came and asked if she could have the money to try an IVF herself. My sister has no biological kids, but does have an 11-year-old stepson. She has endometriosis and PCOS, and has never been able to have a child. Her stepson is not very close to her, and they've had problems with him since the start of their marriage. Her stepson has always brought up the fact that his dad married again too soon after his mom died, and how my sister is trying to replace her. He ran away from home 3 times already. They also had the police and CPS on their door because he tried to get removed from their care. Our main reason for saying no is we wanted to give our son a sibling, but I can't lie and say that the dynamic in her home was on my mind too. And I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to bring a new baby into their home when things are as bad as they are. She was very upset with me for turning her down. She said she has no kids and we already have 1, and we'd give her a chance if we gave her the money. I shut her down. I told her my answer was no and it was final. We waited for my wife to be far enough along before announcing our last IVF cycle worked. We did this at a family dinner. Everyone was so happy for us except for my sister and her husband. She started making snarky comments about how it was no big deal when we already had a kid. I told her, given our struggles, it was a big deal. Our parents told her that she should be happy for us. She then starts ranting and raving about how selfish we are to deny her motherhood, and to deny her and her husband the chance to have a family together. Our other sister pointed out about her stepson. She told her she's not his mother and he hates her guts, so it's not like she'll ever get any joy out of mothering him. I told her I was sorry she couldn't have a kid of her own, but she didn't get to demand that we sacrifice a second child for her. She then told me I held her stepson against her. I told her I couldn't say that it hadn't crossed my mind that bringing a child into what was already a complicated mess would be a bad idea, but that it was beside the point because we wanted another child. She told me I was a jerk for humiliating her in front of the whole family and picking a fight with her. I told her she picked the fight, not me. That's one heck of an ask. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure that kind of thing is very expensive. That's a lot to ask and assume that someone's gonna give you that kind of money, especially when they've already allotted it for them to do that themselves. I guess I understand the impulse to want to ask if she doesn't have any kids herself and doesn't have any way to raise this kind of money on her own. But either way, you would think social etiquette would kick in and you don't ask for that kind of thing. Like our original poster said, they're literally being asked to sacrifice their second child essentially. And this is all just for a chance to have a baby. No, I don't think you're the jerk. I think that she needs to realize that she might be the main character of her own story, but all these other people around her in the world matter too. My wife's brother completely ruined our house, and now I have to cancel the trip that we were all supposed to go on. I have a home office and decided to have some light renovations done. I looked into hiring a professional contractor, but my wife wanted me to hire her brother. I was hesitant. First, he's a handyman and not a contractor. Second, he doesn't have insurance, or even many of the tools required to do this job. All of the contractors I spoke to are insured, and he had to borrow my tools. Third, I had to pay him money up front to cover the cost of materials, while the contractors all have accounts with suppliers, so they didn't require any upfront money. My wife talked me into it because he needs the money and has a family. We decided to take a vacation while he was going to do the work and came back to a mess. The carpet was soaked and moldy. Nothing was done. Materials were everywhere and it smelled like a swamp in our house. Apparently, when he drilled into the wall, he didn't locate the water line and hit it. He only noticed the leaking when he came back from lunch and the carpet was soaked. He tried to find the shutoff but couldn't, so he tore into the wall to try and stop the leaking, which only made it worse. On top of which, he couldn't stop it there either. He panicked and called a coworker who came over hours later and found the shutoff. Instead of calling us immediately, he left the house as it was, and I guess it was out of sight, out of mind. The repair cost ended up being triple the original cost. Since his family is living on Section 8 housing and other government assistance, we decided last year to start saving to take them and her parents on a beach vacation this year in December as their Christmas gift. We told them about it a couple of months ago so everyone could get their calendar in order. I told my wife we should cancel the trip and apply that money to the cost of the repairs. This has caused an argument between us. My wife says it's not fair to punish her nieces, nephews, and parents since they've been excited about the trip, and they could never afford to go on their own. I argued we can't afford to eat the cost without it affecting our budget. She loves her nieces and nephews, and keeps saying that I'm unfairly punishing them. We're supposed to go to her parents for dinner tonight, and she forbade me to cancel the trip or even bring up the subject. I don't think I can look at her stupid brother without calling him stupid. I had a feeling this was going to go bad when this story started. I get wanting to help out your brother and that he needs a little bit of money, but this is why you hire a professional. You guys ended up having to spend 3 times as much as you would have spent. I completely agree with our original poster that money doesn't just come from nowhere. If that needs to be paid for, that means that money needs to come from somewhere else. The most logical thing would be from the trip. This was a large, unplanned expense that you guys need to take care of. While this may be disappointing to your nieces and nephews, it's not your fault. It's their father's. Maybe he should be the one to explain that to them. Racist landlord refuses to help interracial couple with lease. So I get him fired and get free rent in the process. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. After graduating college, my girlfriend and I moved to a new state, where she was accepted into an engineering program. We found a lovely garden apartment-style complex that advertised 100 megabytes per second internet speed included in the price among a few other amenities. When we met the property manager, he seemed strict but well-mannered, nothing out of the ordinary, until we signed the lease. The first problem. Suddenly, walking into his office was not allowed without an appointment. I had come by to ask a question, saw him browsing social media, and figured he was as available as he made himself to us when we first came by, unannounced to view a model apartment. Nope. He refused to answer my question and asked me to make an appointment via email. The second problem. The terms of our lease included an attachment to complete within 48 hours of accepting the keys that details all discrepancies within the unit. We submitted the attachment via email around the 40th hour. The property manager responded that the terms recently changed from 48 to 24, and since we had passed 24 hours, we would be held liable for all found damages. When citing our copy of the lease, which explicitly stated 48 hours, he informed us that we signed an outdated copy and would need to make an appointment to come by the office and sign a new lease. The third problem. The internet speed was not 100 megabytes per second as advertised. It was less than 15 megabytes per second off-peak, and about around 5 megabytes per second on-peak. We again contacted the property manager to complain, but were referred to make an appointment. The fourth problem. We made an appointment to address the previous 3 problems. During this meeting, and after I finished voicing our issues, the property manager leans forward and says, "There are other communities in this neighborhood that may be more accepting of people like you and your girlfriend. You're welcome to break the lease and leave." People like you and your girlfriend. I had thought he was referencing our no-nonsense response to his nonsense. Daily communication, scheduling multiple meetings to address these issues, etc. But my girlfriend believed he was speaking towards our skin colors. Her, a black woman, and myself, a white man. My girlfriend jokingly told me to check my privilege before getting serious, and explaining to me that we were experiencing discrimination at the very least. Now for the solution. I did some research and discovered the property manager worked for a larger organization that owned several complexes throughout the country. I found their director of human resources on LinkedIn and made a connection. I then emailed her copies of all email correspondence, screenshots of the lease, pictures of the internet speed flags advertised by the road, and more shots of online speed tests. We further noted his comment and the implications behind it. The human resources director replied within a few hours and promised us she would look into the issue. About 2 days later, the property manager called and asked us to come by his office at our convenience. We showed up near the end of the day and sat down across from him. He then proceeded to ask us if we would be willing to write a letter stating that we accepted his apology, despite not yet offering said apology, and in return, he would credit us a month's rent, accept our damages attachment, and promise to have the ISP on site within a week to assess the internet issues. We declined. He got personal with us and revealed his job may be at stake, and asked us to reconsider. My girlfriend leaned forward and said, "There are communities in this neighborhood that may be more accepting of people like you. You're welcome to leave." The property manager was replaced in a week with a super sweet older woman who not only gave us all the things the original property manager had promised, 1 month credit, accepting the damages attachment, and then further scheduling maintenance to fix said damages, having the ISP assess and upgrade the internet to promised speeds, but she also made it clear her office was always open for anything we may need. I looked up the old property manager about a few months later on LinkedIn. Still unemployed. This is just gross. It's quite blatant what he was trying to say with that comment. It's frankly a disgusting attitude to have in the first place. And for him to call you in there and try and make an agreement before he apologizes really shows how gross this guy really is. You know that's not going to be a genuine apology. He's just saying it to save his own butt. And if I were our original poster, at that point, I would be actively doing anything I can to get you out of there, not doing you any kind of favors. If you're going to act like a jerk, you're gonna get treated like a jerk. And you can go live with all the other jerks in the neighborhood where they're more accepting of people like you. Scammer trying to rip off my client tries to convince them that I'm the one ripping them off, and that I don't actually work at the bank, which we are currently standing in. I work at a bank, and one of the most common queries we get from customers is if a phone call they've received is actually from us or a scam. This happened when I had only been working at the bank for a few months, but a customer came in saying he'd been getting multiple phone calls a day from the bank saying he needed to transfer money out to a safe account, so came in to see what was actually going on. After checking records, it definitely was not us calling him. Top tip, your bank would never ask you to transfer money anywhere. I told him to stop answering the phone and just block the number. It was at this point they tried calling him again, so we decided to have some fun. The customer answered the phone and the scammer started the spiel that he needed to go into the bank and transfer money straight away. It was urgent, but to tell us that the money was for family. He replied, "Well, I'm actually at the bank right now. I'll hand you over to the cashier and you can tell her the details." I didn't know what to expect on the other end of the phone, but after introducing myself to the scammer, who at this point was probably in a panic, they started cursing me and telling me it was wrong for me to pretend to work for a bank. And how dare I put people in danger and try to steal their money. I then pointed out that it was he in fact that was doing that, and again got, "You don't work for the bank, you're a scammer," blah blah blah. The customer and myself let him go on for another minute and then just hung up. Surprisingly, this has happened to other colleagues of mine. I don't know what the scammers think they're going to achieve at this point, because the customer's obviously not going to believe an anonymous person on the phone that a fully uniformed employee in front of them doesn't work for the bank. But who knows? Arguing back with scammers can be a bit of fun for us, especially knowing some of the damage those jerks cause. Ugh, these kinds of people are the absolute worst. Their primary targets are old people who don't really know any better and don't understand that they're being scammed. They're willing to take people's life savings over the phone and lie the whole way along. This one had clearly been caught, but was somehow trying to desperately save his own butt and walk away with a buck. If you guys ever get calls or texts like this, do not respond. Never go through an outside number contacting you. You hang up the phone and call the number on the back of the card. That way, you know you're speaking to an official representative of that company. My entitled aunt insists that my Christmas present is for her daughter. This story takes place when I was about 8 or 9 years old. My mom, sister, and I were visiting my aunt and my older cousin, who's about a year older than me, for Christmas and staying there for a couple of weeks. My cousin was also celebrating her birthday a little after Christmas, and so we saved some of her gifts for that party since it would be easier. After we'd eaten the cupcakes and sang happy birthday, it was time for her to open her gifts. So my mom brought them out for her. She opens a gift and it was an Equestria girl singing Pinkie Pie doll. Since we all enjoyed that series and it was her favorite character. She opens the next and it was the exact same doll that was meant to be given to me for Christmas, but got mixed up in there somehow. My mom goes up to her and says, "Sorry honey, that one wasn't meant for you. We just put the wrong toy in your pile of presents." My older cousin gives the toy back. My cousin was completely fine with it, but that's when my entitled aunt comes in. She grabs the toy from my mom and says,
She opened the toy, it's hers now.
I look at my aunt and say, "But Mama said that one was meant for me." My mom asks for the doll back from my aunt and picks up the wrapping paper that had the label with my name on it and says, "I specifically got these matching dolls for them to match. It's not fair if older cousin gets both of them."
Well, she should have both of them since it's her birthday, and she'll just keep both in case one of them breaks.
At this point, my older cousin comes in trying to defuse things before it gets any worse and says, "Mom, let her have the doll. I don't even play with dolls unless they're here anyways." Entitled aunt, getting pretty loud, says,
No, you're keeping the doll.
Even though my older cousin and I were only about a year or two apart, I was a really sensitive kid, so this hit me pretty hard. It would have been fine otherwise, but at the time, it was one of the worst years of my life. At this point, my sister had also gotten into the conversation, and my mom and entitled aunt are arguing. My older cousin and I just go into the other room while it all plays out, trying to play with the other dolls we'd gotten together. My mom eventually wins the argument and gets the doll back, but entitled aunt and my mom were mad at each other for the rest of this day. Several years later, my aunt still acts like this, but a lot worse, and last time to the point where she attacked my sister and I. But that's a story for another time. How are you gonna sit there and literally take toys away from kids? Honestly, your kid already has the exact same one. There was clearly a mix-up. You're really gonna get into an argument over this and think that you're in the right? Come on. I don't understand how people like this can possibly view themselves as a decent person. You know in her mind she thinks she's right. Honestly, just don't be a jerk. My parents grounded me for the entire summer because they thought I gave my 6-year-old sister beer. I was about 12 or 13 and was babysitting my sister and her friend. They were playing house and they found some empty beer cans my parents had just finished before going out. They asked if they could play with them. I cleaned them out and let them have them. About 2 days later, my dad bursts into my room screaming at me for giving a 6-year-old beer. Mind you, I was still asleep when he burst in, so I was completely confused. Later, he showed me the empty cans in my sister's room and asked why I let them drink. I tried to explain the situation. They were empty, I rinsed them out, and put water in them. He didn't believe me because my sister was so adamant about me getting grounded. Summertime, no phone, no going out, no allowance, but still had to do the chores. And no pool. We had one in the yard. 2 months, mostly my whole summer, grounded. To say that I was ticked off is an understatement. So being older and wiser, I tricked her into a confession. I asked my mom to stand by the kitchen window. It was open and led to our porch. I asked my sister after a bunch of small talk, "Why did you lie to mom and dad about me giving you beer when it was water?" Her reply was, "So you'd get in trouble." My mom flew out of the kitchen with the wooden spoon. This was well over 30 years ago, so this was much more commonplace in that day. And my sister got a spanking and a grounding. And I was repaid my allowance plus some, and was allowed a pool party that weekend that I invited all the kids in the neighborhood to, including my sister's friends. She watched from her room all day. Now as adults we laugh about it, but honestly, kids can be straight up jerks. Yeah, this is one of those kids will be kids situations. This is just the kind of thing siblings do sometimes. It sucks as the parent trying to weed out what actually happened, but you can only do your best. Obviously, the parents would be pretty upset if they thought that the 6-year-old had been drinking beer. I'd like to think that any 12 or 13-year-old would know that that's a really bad thing to do and that you would have a little more trust in them, but I guess they're just reacting in the moment. Either way, yeah, it's a 6-year-old. Surely you can outwit them and come out of this on top. I called out my sister's good-for-nothing boyfriend and told him to go get a job. My sister, 22, is starting med school in the fall. She's been dating Jack, 23, since high school. He's been in college for 5 years now, changed his major twice, and only has an associate's. We were having dinner to celebrate my sister, and my whole family was there. Jack decided to tell everyone at my sister's dinner that his parents told them they wouldn't pay for his schooling anymore. My sister started to comfort and reassure him. It ticked me off that she had to do that at her own party. I told the boyfriend I could help him with his resume, but he said he didn't need to work on his resume since he didn't have his degree yet. I asked what exactly his plan was, and he said he didn't have one yet. I changed the topic to my sister's upcoming trip she's taking with her friends. Jack then uses this to transition to talking about how he wants to apply to study abroad, but is not sure how he'll pay for it. I said, I've always found the best way to make money is with a job. He glared at me, and my dad changed the topic. After dinner, Jack came up to me and asked if I had a problem. I said I didn't appreciate him tainting my sister's event with his sob story about how he couldn't get a 4-year degree in 5 years. He said I was a hypocrite with a useless art degree that doesn't even use my degree in my job. I said that's irrelevant because I have a job, and he should probably get one too, because my sister's a student and can't afford to carry his worthless butt. He called me a self-righteous jerk and left. I've been thinking about it and I think I overreacted, and I could have just blown him off and not talked to him when he came up to me. I doubt cussing at him is going to convince him, so I probably shouldn't have done that. No, you did the right thing. He needed to be called out. If you don't say anything, this can go on for years. And then everyone's too heavily invested, and your sister's stuck in this relationship with this worthless no-good nobody. I would have said the same thing. You need money? Go get a job. Who cares if you don't have a degree? Go get a job at McDonald's or Starbucks. You need money. Be humble. Go get a job and make some. My sister thinks I'm gonna forget a $37,000 debt just because she wants me to. My mother died about 2 months ago. She didn't leave behind much other than a paid-for house worth about $180K and a little money in the bank. Mom announced a couple of years ago that she intended to leave her house to my sister Sarah, who takes care of her severely disabled son full-time. Mom said that she wanted to make sure they had a roof over their heads, and the rest of her kids could make it on their own. Sarah does struggle a lot, and has said many times that she wouldn't have been able to make it without Mom. When Mom died, she had some bills outstanding, but her biggest debt was that she owed me $37,000. I'd loaned her the money so that she could fix her plumbing and septic system, as well as making the house more handicapped friendly for Sarah and Jeremy. Mom had been paying me back every month. I have paperwork proving the money is owed. Here's the problem. If I file a claim against her estate like any other creditor would do, my brother, John, Mom's executor, will have no choice but to pay it. But to do so, he'll have to sell the house since there isn't money in the estate to pay it any other way, which means that Sarah and Jeremy will have to find a different place to live. I know Mom wanted Sarah to have the house. There's also the issue that Mom's will said Sarah got the house, but any money in the estate would be split evenly between the other 4 of us. So technically, we think that means Sarah would actually get nothing. John is talking to a lawyer to make sure he's reading that right. Sarah's also concerned that if she did get a large amount of money, John and I have both said that we would give her whatever we got from the house if it does get sold, that it could interfere with the help she gets from the government. John and Sarah are both pushing me to not file a claim against the estate, but if I don't, then the loan basically goes away. Sarah has said that she'll pay it back to me, and would even sign a new loan. The trouble is that I don't believe her. She's borrowed money before and never paid it back. Not because she doesn't want to, but because she can't afford to. She struggled for money living with Mom, so it's gonna be even worse for her without Mom paying the bills in the house as well. If I don't file a claim, I'll be out $37,000, and that's far more than I ever want to hand over as a gift, even to my sister. I've told John and Sarah that I'm officially filing a claim on Monday morning. They're both calling me a greedy jerk and telling me I'm ignoring what Mom wanted. I think it's unreasonable to expect me just to forget $37,000. Am I the jerk? I feel like the reactions on this one may vary, but I'm gonna have to come down and say that yeah, you're being a jerk. jerk. I understand that that is a lot of money, but you need to think about what you're doing to your family over $37,000 you clearly had to spare. Your sister has a disabled son, no home of her own, and is struggling to pay bills. And you're upset that you don't have $37,000 extra dollars in your account? If anyone needs charity, it sounds like your sister does. For God's sake, help her out. You're 100% being a jerk about this. My brother is furious that I'm willing to look after his son when he isn't. I'm a 44-year-old male, and my younger brother, T, 37, and I have been in a huge fight in the last few days due to a recent event that happened in my family. To give you some context, T had a girlfriend in his early 20s. We didn't have a lot of interactions, and they broke up. He never told me exactly why. Well, it turns out that he got her pregnant, and when she told him, he simply said he wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. She gave birth to a boy, L, who's now 15. No one in my family knew about it since they never spoke again. The information that I got from his social worker isn't a lot, but this is everything I managed to gather. L and his mother lived together for 2 years before he was taken away from her due to neglect. Since then, L went from foster home to foster home. All I can say is that the system wasn't nice on him, and he endured a lot in it. He has partial hearing loss, apparently has PTSD and behavioral issues due to his surroundings. I'm not sure how they got the information that we're his biological family. Probably his biological mother finally told on T. I don't know if I'm angrier about him never telling us that he got another girl pregnant, or that he simply sent her away. Anyways, his social worker talked to my brother and asked him to take L in. T asked for a DNA test, and it's 100% his child. L was introduced to my family, and honestly, L is a lovely kid. Everyone thought he would be difficult to deal with, but he's just a kid who desperately needs a family and somewhere safe away from everything he endured. But T explained that he wasn't going to take L in. He explained that he has another family now. To say I was angry is an understatement. I just can't understand. How dare him? Knowing everything he went through and knowing that if he says no, L will be forced back into the system that's failed him countless times, to reject him. I fought a lot with my brother, but he wouldn't budge, saying that he can't bring an unknown child with mental problems to his house that he has small children in. So yesterday, I reached out to his social worker and asked her if I could be the one to foster L. I explained to her my brother's motives about the small children, and told her that I wouldn't have that problem since my children are older than L, and it would be good for L to get used to his family that way. They liked the idea and started to look into it, and my brother was notified of that. We got into a new argument. He said that I have no right to do what I'm doing, that L is not real family. I said that he's rejecting his rights as a father to L, so he couldn't tell me what to do with his child. My brother got involved. He scolded T, but said I overstepped when I asked to foster him, since he's still T's child and it was obvious that he doesn't want L around. I'm not changing my mind if I'm actually the jerk. I won't let L go into the system again, but I want to know if I am being the jerk here. I think this is another one of those, no way in heck are you the jerk. I get that this might make your brother feel uncomfortable, but this is something that you feel you need to do. This is a kid in need who's a blood relative, and you're willing to look after them. Your brother is just making excuses as to not have an uncomfortable situation with his newfound son. If that's the moral bar he wants to set, that's entirely up to him. You've decided to set the bar a little higher and actually take care of this child. What you're doing for him massively outweighs your brother being a little ticked off. He's just gonna have to get over it, because at the end of the day, a kid having a roof over his head is more important than your brother's feelings. Stepdad cons me out of my laptop, so I con him out of his car. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. 13 years ago, I was in my late teens, living on my own and really struggling to live financially. One of the few possessions I had was an old laptop. My laptop had stopped working properly, and while I'm fairly proficient in using a computer, I had no idea about fixing them. I did a bit of research on the internet, but couldn't get it working, so I asked my stepdad to take a look. He has a quick look and says it's screwed, and he'll take it off my hands if I don't want it. So I said sure. If it's broken, broken, then it's no good to me. 10 minutes later, I walk in the room and he's using it. I asked if he fixed it, and he says,
Yeah, thanks for the laptop.
I was obviously ticked. My mom says she wasn't getting involved, and his only response was that he did a quick internet search to find the fix, and I could have done the same. I was broke, and he took one of my only possessions, even though he had a PC and a laptop already. A few months later, I was visiting my mom and stepdad when I had an idea. While I am useless with computers, I'm very competent with mechanics, specifically Audis, and my stepdad had a 2001 Audi A3. Before coming in the house, I went under his car and unplugged the oil level sensor and a vac line for the turbo. Later on that day, he went to go to the shop or something. When he started the car, it threw up oil warning lights on the dash and wouldn't boost, so he turned it off and had a look of concern on his face. I went out to ask him what's up, and he said that something had gone majorly wrong. He says something along the lines of catastrophic turbo failure or engine failure. He's already spent quite a bit on repairs and didn't want to spend any more on it, so spoke to my mom about just cutting his losses and scrapping it. I asked how much it's worth at the scrapyard, and he says about £100, so I graciously offer £120 to take it off his hands, to maybe part it out, which he accepts. He signs over the title and wrote me a receipt of purchase and handed the keys over. I walked outside, lifted the hood, pretended to look at my phone for a minute, went under the car and plugged the vac line and oil sensor back in, fired it straight up and drove around the block. When I got back, I gave him the thumbs up and said it's all fine now. His mouth was wide open and he was mega ticked, and my reply was, you could have found the solution too with a quick internet search. He tried arguing that it wasn't fair, and if it's working then I can't just take his car, but I just said he didn't have a problem tricking me out of my laptop, and that he's already signed the car over to me, so tough luck. My mom kinda laughed and said she's not getting involved, and that it was his own fault. I still have the car to this day, and it's practically in showroom condition and runs great. I would think as soon as you said that to him, he'd understand exactly what was up. He knows what he pulled with the laptop. He knows this is the exact same situation, except now the shoe's on the other foot. He already knows how it worked out last time. It's gonna work out the same way this time, and you've got all the official paperwork to prove that that car is now yours. I agree with your mom. He brought it on himself. Personally, I would have just taken the laptop back, but I guess you wanted to do one better. My entitled jerk of a neighbor thinks he can use my driveway however he pleases. My fiance and I purchased our home a few years ago, and our neighbor introduced herself shortly after we moved in. She seemed like a nice elderly woman who appeared to have custody of her young grandson. We had no issues until her middle-aged son moved in. This guy always yelled at the little boy, and just generally acted like a jerk. He drove a small beat-up truck that leaked oil. His mother has a nice long double-car driveway and didn't want oil stains on the concrete, so she had him park in the side yard next to our house. It was right outside of our kitchen window and kind of an eyesore, but it's her property, so whatever. We assumed that her son would drive through their yard to his parking spot, but apparently that was too inconvenient. Instead, he decided to back into our driveway and through our yard to get to his spot. We were always at work when he did this, but we caught it on our camera. Our driveway is gravel and isn't in the best of shape. Her son would take off too fast and throw gravel everywhere. After a couple of days, he started to leave a rut, so my fiance went over there to ask him to stop. The mother answered the door and seemed annoyed by our request. Her son parked in their driveway after this, so we assumed that was the end of it. Well, while I was at work the following Friday, I received a motion notification from one of our cameras. I check it, and sure enough, I see her son using our driveway once again. After work, I passively aggressively decided to park my car at the end of our driveway. The entrance is only big enough for one car, and there's a deep ditch on both sides, so I knew her son couldn't get out that way. We were planning on staying in for the weekend, so I wouldn't be moving it again until Monday morning. On Saturday, we were doing our yard work out front, and the son came out with his dog. He gave us a dirty look, but didn't say anything. I figured he got the message. We woke up up around noon on Sunday to a bunch of notifications from our doorbell camera. I pull up the videos and see the neighbor's son absolutely fuming. He rang our doorbell 5 times and stood on the porch for 20 minutes. The whole time he was throwing his hands up and muttering about needing to leave. He actually expected us to get up, go outside in the pouring rain, and move my car so he could use our driveway to get out. He must have driven through his mother's yard to leave, because his truck was gone. After that day, he never said anything to us, and only parked in her driveway. So I guess he learned his lesson. The thing is, if he would have asked us first, we might have worked something out with him, but instead he wanted to act like an entitled jerk. Sounds like, bottom line, this guy just needs to get a new truck. That would probably solve all the issues at hand. He'd then be able to park in the driveway at least, and this wouldn't be a problem anymore. Regardless, there's a problem when you take it upon yourself to just drive across your neighbor's lawn on a regular basis. Like our original poster said, if he had come forward and asked, maybe something could have been worked out. But he saw fit to use their driveway and lawn as he wanted, which just isn't right. It's not your property. You have to have respect for your neighbors. My teacher bullied me all through summer camp, so my dad had her charged with insurance fraud. When I was in 8th grade, I tried out for a spot on the drill team. For those unfamiliar with that, it's the group that dances alongside the marching band, and we're separate from the cheerleaders. Think the Rockets, but awkward. The reason I tried out was because those girls, you know the ones, pretty, popular, teacher favorites, laughed at me when I showed up for the informational meeting. They said I wasn't right for it and didn't belong. It made me more determined to learn the routines and become a little more fit so I could do them. I was flexible as much as a 14-year-old could be, but at home I practiced and stretched, and showed up for the rehearsals and tryouts. Only a couple of decent girls would not act like I was poison in the line when we had our arms linked. I passed tryouts because I could do the routine. My dad, who owned his own business doing car repair, wasn't rich, but he managed to pay for my camp fees and uniforms. He dropped me off each morning of summer camp on his way to work. There, we learned the routines we would be performing at pep rallies and football games. We had to stand out in the sweltering Louisiana heat and humidity in August and stand in position for minutes at a time. Any move and you had to do kicks. This was a version of push-ups or having to run laps where you stood and did sets of 25 high kicks for each infraction. I ended up with blisters on my upper arms from the sun. Oh, let me tell you about the sponsor, the teacher in charge. She was the epitome of a cranky old woman who had an only child who went through these dance teams and did private dance lessons. She was perfect to her mom. At the time, dance moms wasn't a thing, but that's exactly like how she was. She would berate me for the smallest things and basically bully me along with the other girls. For example, when I was feeling faint for having to do kicks for the 3rd time that day, I was sitting down beside another girl who had pulled a hamstring. She's sitting with us while watching her daughter, who was our choreographer of course, commenting how wonderful she was, and said to me to get back out there. She could understand why the other girl was sitting. She was an athlete, so she got a pass. She played basketball as well. She would yell at me from across the gym to suck in my stomach. She told me I was rude when I was eating lunch with everyone else and laughing at something someone said and coughed on my sandwich. The other girls would say things to me also, and it was as though she encouraged it. Not only is junior high bad enough, but this on top of it was bad. I tried to be strong and show them I could do it, but it made me cry as soon as I got home. The time was different than it is now. Our student newspaper would put out a who's who based on physical traits like best hair and best smile. We had to shoot down vulnerable, self-conscious kids. The night of our first game performance, I was waiting to be picked up with a few others and the sponsor. She went to the bathroom and came back with one girl who was caught smoking in the bathroom with some high school kids. Her punishment was that she had to sit out the next game. My dad was running late. He had to work and couldn't leave his shop unattended. And after about 30 minutes, she told me, "You know this means you're off the team." My dad pulled up a few minutes later, and as soon as I got in his truck, I was sobbing. I told him what happened, and he said, "Just a minute, I'll be right back," and proceeded to rip that woman a new one about her attitude towards me. Years later, this woman brings her car to my dad's shop for repair. He remembers her, but she doesn't remember him. She was just as condescending as she'd ever been, treating him like a lowly servant under her because he did manual labor. He was writing her estimate for the insurance, and she kept trying to get him to add in stuff that wasn't caused by the accident she was there for. Things like a ding on the back bumper when the damage was in the front. He wouldn't do it, and she got all huffy and said something like if he didn't, she would have his license revoked. Now, since my dad had his shop broken into and tools stolen, he had installed cameras. He sent that video to the insurance adjuster, one that he had a long, good relationship with in his course of business, and she got hit with attempting insurance fraud charges. I don't know the exact extent of it, but she should be glad her threats to his livelihood weren't added on there. Of course, a woman like this wouldn't remember who he is. You always hope that they learn something from an interaction like that, but here goes to show they never do. They continue to be the crappy human being they always were. Even without the initial story of her being a horrible teacher and bullying the daughter, I still would have reported her for insurance fraud. Why should I lie for you when you can't even show me common courtesy, let alone having the extra knowledge of what a jerk you actually are? Times may have been different and traditional beauty standards may have been more enforced, but that doesn't give you the right to bully a 13 or 14-year-old. They're going through enough crap in their life at that age. They don't need an adult being a jerk too. Random guy thinks he can propose on my film set. I, 22-year-old female, am currently a film undergrad, and for our final term project, we have to produce a short film in groups of 8. I was the director and main writer. We planned to shoot a number of scenes at a local mall, which was always busy, but after a lot of communication, was allowed to film only for 5 hours. And if we went over time, we would have to pay a penalty fee that would put us over budget for our project. So we show up for our filming day. Everything went rather smoothly, and our team was efficient, but delays added up and we had to rush our few final scenes. For our final scene, we had to prepare a wall of yellow balloons at an outdoor square in the mall. When we showed up to film, however, there was a group of 3 girls, 2 holding bouquets and 2 guys standing right in front of it. Our art director had been sitting nearby to make sure no one's tampering with the wall, but she was occupied with an urgent call. As we set up, our assistant director, P, went to ask them to leave. One of the girls told us that their friend was heading there to propose to his girlfriend, and that the balloons made a romantic backdrop and would be nice for photos, and their friend was already informed to show up at that square. At this point, we were all set up with about 45 minutes to film our final scene. I went over and P informed me what was going on. We again asked them to leave and cited our limited filming time, but they remained adamant, saying that their friend was arriving soon and they won't take long. Some of the team felt bad and that we should just let the proposal happen first, but mostly we were worried about the penalty fee. I also voiced that having to rush the proposal and our team just standing around would take away from their celebratory joy. Plus, we don't have time for them to take photos and stand around and celebrate. I went back to ask them to leave, this time threatening to call mall security. The 5 of them got agitated and started yelling at me. P and our art director, G, came running, and we were trying to calm them down when their friend and his girlfriend show up. He came running over and asked what was going on, and after he learnt about the situation, started yelling along with his friends. All the while, his girlfriend was standing around awkwardly, having heard our argument, and their proposal now essentially ruined. Mall security showed up after G called them, and they very reluctantly left. We managed to finish filming the scene and cleaning up all our sets without any trouble before the given time. When I got home, I told my family about what happened over dinner. My mom and sister agreed with what we did, but my dad thought we should have let the proposal happen, saying it was a pity that we ruined the guy's proposal, and that it was our own fault for not properly allocating our time. Am I the jerk for not letting the guy propose on our film set? Okay, I would understand if this was something that he had planned for a long time and you guys were interfering, but it sounds like they just happened to walk past this and decided this was the spot it's gonna happen. You'd think once they realized that no, this is set up for a purpose and you can't be here, that they would just accept that. I'm sorry you guys have gone to the trouble to make plans to use this place in the last 5 minutes, but we've got a very limited amount of time and have paid money to use this space. You don't get to just come in and decide what happens. Honestly, the guy proposing should not be so upset. You didn't have a plan, and now you're upset that your plan that you came up with in 5 minutes is falling apart? Come on, just wait till you have to plan the wedding, buddy. I had to explain to my girlfriend that despite the fact that her name is on the lease, this apartment isn't hers. My girlfriend, 23, and I, 25, have been together for almost 2 years now. Back in May, she got a new good-paying job, and we signed a lease together for an apartment that I just moved into about 3 weeks ago. When we originally signed the lease, we agreed that I would move in July when the apartment became available, and she would move in November after having some time to live at home and save up some money. This will be her first time ever living out of her house, which she's very attached to as she's lived there her whole life, and has a very close relationship with her mom. Her dad died in high school, so her and her mom are very close. I had no problem with her waiting until November to move in. We agreed on that. Since then, she's been spending a lot more time at her house instead of time with me. She only stays at the apartment once or twice a week. She claims she's soaking up her final moments in the house she was raised in before she finally becomes an adult and moves out. Since we signed the lease, we've spent a lot less time together, as she soaks up these last moments at home. I've communicated that I wish we still spent more time together, and that I wish she wanted to spend the night more often, and start making this place feel like home. She always disagrees. Obviously, I'm paying the rent alone for the next few months since I'm the only one living here. The actual issue is that when she's here and we have people over, she refers to the apartment as our place. When I put something in a place she doesn't like putting a cleaner under the wrong sink, she claims this is her home too because her name is on the lease and she'll be moving in soon, so she should get a say in where things go. I guess I don't see it as fair for her to call it our place, when I've communicated nicely that I wish she wanted to spend more time over here, and she always shoots it down. I told her this isn't her place yet because she doesn't pay for it yet, and she only spends 1 or 2 nights a week here. She doesn't want to spend time here because she wants to soak up her final moments at home with her mom. So I told her if that's the case, then she has no say in where I put things or how I do things here. I told her it's my home and not hers yet. She said this really hurt her feelings and makes her feel unwelcome here. Am I the jerk for saying that to her? While I totally understand where you're coming from, I don't think it's something that should have been said out loud. You know that there's going to be repercussions for this. You guys are planning to move in together in a few months. Do you really want to have everything the way you want it just to rearrange the whole place when she comes in? If she wants to move something, let her move it. It's not that big a deal. I think maybe this is just coming from a place of spite. You feel a little slighted by the way she's been behaving and felt the need to make a comment. At the end of the day, I don't think this comment was productive at all, so I'm gonna have to go with it was a bit of a jerk move, but I understand why you're upset. I told my family to get the heck out of my house after they told me I should break up with my boyfriend after his sister just died. I, 28-year-old male, have been dating my boyfriend, 29-year-old male, for almost 4 years, and we're planning on getting married soon. My family and I have had tension because of my relationship, as they didn't want to accept me being gay. They eventually did, but I've still never fully forgiven them. My boyfriend is usually the happiest person around, but his sister, who's always been his best friend, died last month. He's been a mess for the past month, and I completely understand, and I've been there for him. He was there for me when my cat died, and considering his grief is most likely 100 times worse due to losing his sister who he's known his whole life, I want to be there for him completely. My family was at my house a couple days ago. I thought it was going well until they started saying how my boyfriend was being so dramatic over all this, and that I should break up with him. I started seeing red. Thankfully, my boyfriend boyfriend wasn't there to hear that, but I was furious. I asked them if they were being serious, and they said they were. I told them to get the heck out of my house and to leave me alone until they were ready to apologize. They stormed out, and everyone is ticked off at me, but I honestly don't care. All I'm focused on right now is being there for my boyfriend. That said, I do kind of feel like a jerk because they claimed it was for my sake, but I'm not sure. No, you were right to chew them out. I have a feeling this is coming from somewhere else. No decent person would think that that's the resolution to this issue, and would understand why someone would be so upset about something like that. I assume you've explained the relationship between the two of them to your parents, and they still choose to make a comment like that, which is just gotta be one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard. You're in a loving, supportive relationship, and your significant other is just going through a hard time right now. They just need some support. I'm glad you understand that, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. You know the value of your relationship. Your parents can go suck an egg. It's a really good thing your boyfriend wasn't around to hear that, or that could have led to a really tough relationship between them. Entitled mother forces me to babysit for free, so I expose her scheme to her husband. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Years ago, this new neighbor of mine, she had recently moved to a house on the next street over, kept trying for the better part of a summer to use me as a free babysitter. It started when her kid, who was a really cute, well-behaved kid, around 7 years old, showed up at my door at 7:15 in the morning. We were all just waking up and getting around, so I told him that my boys weren't ready to play yet and to come back in a few hours. That's when the kid told me his mom had gone to work. This seemed a bit odd to me, so I brought him in and tried to call his mom. This was the time of only landlines. Sure enough, she was gone. So I brought him in and fed him breakfast. He stayed with us the rest of the day and he got along well with my two boys who were 5 and 10. I had only talked to his mom about 2 times, so I have no idea why she would think this was a good idea. When his mom came home, I walked him over so I could talk to her. I told her not to do that again. I told her that I would be willing to watch him on occasion if asked first, but not every day. Her response was, "Well, what do you have to do all day?" This kind of took me by surprise. I tried to tell her that I work at home on commissions. She rolled her eyes and told me that being an artist isn't a real job, and besides, I was married, so I didn't need to work. I should have pointed out to her that she was married and working, but I felt myself getting angry and I didn't want to argue with her. "Just don't do that again," I said to her. "You have teenage kids home for the summer. Have them babysit." She frowned at me and said, "They work." I said, "Well, so do I." Then I went home. The next morning at 7:15, the kid sheepishly shows up again. Once again, I bring him in and feed him breakfast and later lunch. Once again, I took him to his home and once again told his mother to please not do that again. She actually tried to tell me that it was my neighborly duty to watch him, and I told her that if she sent him tomorrow, I wouldn't be there because of a doctor's appointment. She said that as a babysitter, I should have given her several days' notice about this. I angrily told her I was not a babysitter, and then went home. The next morning, I made my 7 a.m. appointment, went grocery shopping afterward, and it was about 10 a.m. when I got home. The poor kid was waiting for me on my porch. He had been there for nearly 3 hours, and the little guy was scared and hungry. That night, when I took the kid home, I was angry. I told her how the kid was scared and alone. She actually said that she had told me I hadn't given her enough time to find anyone else, and that his being alone was my fault. I pointed at her and said, "I am not a babysitter. Don't send him over again." That night, this woman had her adult nephew call me to scream at me for not being home when his poor aunt dropped off her son. How dare I leave a small child alone like that? I told the nephew that his aunt knew I wasn't home, so it was her fault that the child was left all alone. I said that I had repeatedly asked his aunt not to send the kid over anymore and that I was not a babysitter. The nephew freaked out at me when I said that, and I hung up on his screaming at me. This worked for 2 wonderful quiet days. Then right back back to it. I tried everything, but this woman insisted that it was my neighborly duty to babysit and would tell me as much. Finally, I decided to solve this problem, I would just get a job outside of my home, and that way she would have to stop. I was too much of a pacifist back then. I no longer am. I landed an interview for a position at the local library, and I was ecstatic. I told the woman to keep her son home because I had arranged for my kids to stay with their grandmother while I went to this interview. The next morning, I drove to my mother-in-law's house and took my kids inside. When I went to leave, I found this woman's kid waiting for me in my car. She had actually followed me there and put her son in my unlocked car and then zoomed off while I was dropping off my boys. My mother-in-law wasn't the most flexible person in the world, and she adamantly refused to watch an extra kid. I had to cancel my interview. I was livid. I toyed with several ideas at this moment. I could take the kid to her job and leave him with her, or I could call the police and CPS. I wasn't really sure how stable this woman's job was, and I didn't want her to get fired. And when I went to go call the CPS, I chickened out, because it really wouldn't be fair to the little boy. Besides, I had heard really scary stories about CPS. In the end, I just waited for her to come home. I left the boy at my house with my hubby. I planned on doing a lot of cussing, and I stomped over to her house and met her before she even got out of her car. I shouted at her. I told her she was dense, stupid, moronic, and crazy. I told her that she had lost me my job interview, and if she sent her kid over to be watched again, I was gonna call CPS and the police. I told her that she was violating my space, and if it took going to court to get her to knock it off, then so be it. She then put her hand on her hip, and in her most snotty tone, she said, "Well, if you didn't want to sit with them, all you had to do was tell me." I really don't know how I kept from punching her right there and then. This comment alone was so asinine. I turned on my heels to stomp home when I saw her husband pulling up. Now, this was the first time I had ever met her husband. He worked at a job that only allowed him to be home on weekends. I can't blame him. I wouldn't want to be around her either. But when she saw him, she turned tail and ran into her house. He saw that I was upset and asked me what had happened. I told him all of it, especially the incident at my mother-in-law's. The poor man was shocked. He had been told that I was being paid and he'd been giving her money to pay me. He had no idea all this had been going on, and he was very, very apologetic over the whole thing. In fact, he apologized again to my husband when he came over to pick up his little boy. Finally, she stopped sending her kid over. Later, I heard that she was bad-mouthing me and warning folks about what a horrid babysitter I was, but I took that as a favor. I didn't want to babysit any kids other than my own, and I still hate doing so. I don't hate the kids. I love the kids. It's dealing with the parents that I don't like. The kid came over only once in a while after that to play with my kids. After he called first to get permission, the way it's supposed to be done. I'm sure his dad had something to do with that, because the kid only came over on weekends. This is one of the few stories I have involving this crazy lady. Her only entertainment in life seems to be seeing how bizarre she can act in this neighborhood. I'm luckier than my neighbors in the fact that she leaves me alone now, and I'm very happy with that. I have a feeling you just got this woman in a lot of trouble with her husband. What exactly was she doing with that money? I'm sure he's gonna have a lot of questions for her. It sounds like that would have been a decent amount over time that she had piled up that she was supposedly giving to you. That kind of money doesn't disappear easily. Who knows? Maybe she had a gambling problem or something. Regardless, this woman seems to be in some kind of place of her own. She's definitely got a world revolves around me complex. I think our original poster showed immense restraint here. While I do think they made the right move in not calling CPS, I would have made this woman's life miserable. I intervened during a wild Karen attack on a young mother. I went to the supermarket to grab a few things for lunch and dinner. It's early and slow, so the store only had the self-checkout and one register open. As I got to the register, I see a young woman, early 20s, with a sleeping baby in her arm and a basket with formula, diapers, over-the-counter baby items for diaper rash, and several prescriptions that were paid for at the pharmacy. The girl gets to the register before me, and then I saw the rampaging Karen come out of the aisle aisle right in front of me. I knew there'd be trouble from the oversized sunglasses, Karen haircut, yoga pants 3 sizes smaller than they should have been that I'll bet had never seen the inside of a gym or yoga studio, and the very low-cut top that showed off a lot of skin that no one wanted to see. She has maybe a dozen items in her cart. This was during the global situation, and the clerk, the 20-something, and I are wearing the required mask. But of course, Karen can't be bothered. The store has markings on the floor for social distancing, but of course, that doesn't apply to the wild Karen. The young mother is holding the sleeping baby and trying to fish her wallet out of her small purse, while also holding the diaper bag and usual baby accessories. The cashier hadn't even finished ringing the girl up when the wild Karen started in a loud voice complaining about unprepared shoppers not even having their money ready. Karen's cart is almost touching the 20-something's leg. Naturally, Karen's complaint at full volume had the unfortunate effect of waking the sleeping infant, who registered his displeasure by letting anyone within hearing know. The mother was attempting to calm the infant and still get her wallet out of her purse. The fact that Karen had to wait and now listen to the infant she woke up caused another nasty tirade. I'm in line behind Karen at this point, and then she gets on my last nerve. She's been berating the cashier for not being fast enough, and then God only knows what lack of brain cells caused her to do this, but snaps at the young mother that she should make the brat be quiet, and then decided to attack the girl, snapping if she didn't dress like a slut, she wouldn't have gotten knocked up, since it was obvious that her jeans were too tight, as was her top. For God's sake, she had a baby a couple months before. The young mother was beet red. The cashier was in shock. The infant, not liking the noise, was letting it be known that he wasn't happy, and Karen had gotten on my last nerve. And being old, sick, and in a bad mood and with worse temper, I let loose. I slipped up past Karen and tossed my card to the cashier, and told her the young lady's bill is on me. That got Karen to start again, only for me to loudly say, "Shut up! I'm as tired of your mouth as the little man is." That stunned the young Karen, who only sputters. The young mother thanked me and gave the infant her full attention. Karen is fuming and starts heaving her items onto the belt, but apparently her mouth recovered before her brain. As soon as the cashier finished ringing her up and asked for payment, Karen turned towards me and sneered,
"Well, aren't you gonna pay for mine as well?"
I was done with her and responded, "No, I don't like people who wake up sleeping infants with their big mouths." She huffed and stormed out. I was hoping for I demand to speak to the manager, but you can't have everything. I headed to my car and was pulling out of the parking lot when I saw the young mother sitting at the bus stop holding the infant. Buses out where I live run every hour, so I decided to offer her a ride. Turns out she only lived a couple miles away, under 5 minutes by car, but a couple of hours on foot carrying a baby and supplies. She took the risk of me being a potential axe murderer since I snapped Karen's tirade. I learned that she and her husband were new to the area, moved in for his job. I asked about the little man and learned that as her husband got paid, they bought more of the stuff the baby needed, but right now they were making do with what they had. I wrote down an address and told her that if her husband was off Saturday, she should have him bring them to the address for a yard sale with tons of baby stuff my niece was getting rid of, as she'd had all the babies she's having and she has everything an infant could need. She told me that she'd do that and thanked me again. I dropped them off and made it home, and gave my niece a call describing the girl and infant, and telling her to give the couple anything they liked and I'll cover whatever they couldn't afford. I like babies, and I have no tolerance for Karens. How dare anyone be in front of her or not dress according to your standards? You're nuts, Karen. This lady must have been having a bad day or something. We've all been there. You're trying to find your money, you're juggling a bunch of stuff, it takes you a second. And you said the cashier hadn't even finished ringing up her items. Clearly something else was ticking Karen off that day. You don't just have that kind of reaction for no reason. Who knows why her patience was so thin? But don't take it out on the young mother who's probably having a hard enough time. Karen probably saw her as a target, someone vulnerable that she could let everything out on. Mom needs to learn to stand up for herself. She's got no reason to take crap like that. Thankfully, this time you were there to intervene though. Entitled mother thinks that her personal rules should apply to everyone. Last week I was traveling for work. It had been a long 2 days of meetings, and I was exhausted. I had just arrived at the airport for my evening cross-country flight home when I got the dreaded text from the airline saying that my flight was delayed 2 hours due to mechanical problems. I decided to pass the time by getting something to eat. I found an airport restaurant and sat down to order. I ordered my food and pulled my phone out of my bag to catch up on email and browse the web while waiting for my food to arrive. While I was waiting, a family with a mom, dad, little girl about 5 years old, and a middle school-aged looking boy sat at a table near me. I didn't pay them much attention as I was looking at email on my phone. But then I hear the little girl exclaim in a rather loud voice, "Look, Mom, that lady's on her phone at the table." I then hear the mother reply, "Yes, she shouldn't be doing that. It's rude to have a phone at the table." I glance over and the mother says to me, "We have a rule that no phones are allowed at the table." My first reaction was to say something snarky, as exhaustion was definitely getting the better of me. But then I thought better of it and decided to be polite. I looked at the little girl and said, "We have the same rule in my family, but since I'm here alone, I'm not being rude to anyone by looking at my phone now." At this point, the son looks like he wants to crawl under the table from embarrassment, and the dad is trying to hand the mom a menu and says, "It's okay, let's just order." I think that would be the end of it, but no. The mom says, "Obviously, you have a family, so you know how important it is to follow rules. I would appreciate it if you would put your phone away," in a tone that a parent would use on a petulant teen. The girl chimes in and says, "Yeah, you have to put your phone away. My brother can't have his phone at the table, so you can't either." I look at the little girl and say in as sweet a tone as I can muster, "Well, the great thing about being a grown-up is that I can do whatever I want. So now I'm going to keep looking at my phone," and turn back to my email. The mother sighs loudly. The teen looks even more embarrassed, and the dad tries to get the mom to just order and leave me alone. The mom calls the waiter over and asks to be reseated. He grudgingly moves them to a different table. My food arrives and I eat in peace, enjoying browsing Reddit. I get that she's trying to enforce some rules with her kids, but you don't do that through strangers. You can't expect some random stranger sitting next to you in the food court to just go along with what you want. They're not obligated to do that. There's another way to teach that lesson, and I think our original poster did that pretty well with her comment about being alone. She's not being rude to anyone, therefore it's okay to be on her phone. When you have a bunch of people out for food, it is kinda rude to be on your phone all the time. But guess what, lady? I'm not here with you. My jerk of a coworker keeps messing with my time off, so I make sure he misses his honeymoon. I used to work at the post office as an RCA, which is a rural carrier associate. It was a part-time driver job. It paid well, and I wanted to get the full-time job with benefits, so you have to start somewhere. The full-time driver on my route was Bill. Bill was his own man. He did what he wanted, and the postmaster allowed it. When I was trained, I rode one day with Bill. The next day, Bill called out. I then had to sort the mail and drive the route all alone. It was horrible. The postmaster should have told him to come in, but he was a spineless man. I didn't finish until around 8 p.m. It should have been done by around 3 p.m. given the time of year, and how long it would eventually take me. My schedule was every Saturday and any vacation days Bill would take. I also covered every time he called out. Now, as this was supposed to be a 1-day-a-week job, I had a full-time job as well at my local hospital. My post office job was in the next county over, about 45 minutes away each way. I would get calls at 6 a.m. from Bill with some BS excuse for him not wanting to come to work. He would say he had to see an orthodontist today. I worked with these doctors and I know there was no way he would be able to get an appointment that early. If he needed an appointment, he should have called me the day before so I could get my second shift job covered. Again, spineless postmaster would allow it to happen without any recourse. On my anniversary, I had told him that I'm gonna take my wife out for a nice lunch before we both went to our job at the hospital. At 6 a.m. the phone rang, and it was the same lie as always. I had to go in. I reminded him that it was my anniversary, and he said, "Too bad." I went in. totally ticked off. The same thing on my birthday, and then on my wife's birthday he called out, and I had to work both jobs. A few months later and nothing had changed. I applied to nursing school and was accepted for the fall program. I had several months, so I kept it to myself. My plan was to work the same way I had, and if I was offered a full-time post office job, I'd take it. If not, I'd go to nursing school. Both were great careers. Bill called out whenever the workload was heavy, like with Sears catalogs. They were the worst. The postmaster would do things like remove all the toilet paper from the bathrooms, thinking that we were wasting time pooping, I guess. He'd also turn up the heat in the summer so we'd be miserable and leave on our route faster, which was physically impossible because no matter how hot you got, you had to sort everything before leaving on your route. Sorting was by hand, and I was trying to be very accurate. Now, Bill had gotten remarried shortly before I started with the post office. They never had a chance for a honeymoon, so they put it off. They scheduled a 2-week trip to the Caribbean. When he told me, there was a month to go before they left, which was plenty of notice. He told me the tickets were non-refundable, so don't screw me over. I had had enough of Bill and the postmaster screwing me over all the time. So 10 days before he left, I put in my 2-week notice. The postmaster assumed I'd work through Bill's vacation. Nope, just the first 4 days. Bill called me at home.
Man, I've been good to you. You gotta cover my time off. The vacation is non-refundable.
I remind him of all the times he's lied to force me to cover, and the days I had to work for him, like my anniversary, my birthday, my wife's birthday, etc. Also, how he screwed me over in orientation, making my first several weeks miserable. I left the day I said I would. The postmaster refused to cover, and Bill had to cancel the trip and come in and work. I love nursing, so I made the best choice. Unfortunately, some people really do take their coworkers for granted. Again, we've got someone with a me complex. They just figure they want the day off for whatever reason and to heck with everyone else and what they want, regardless of the fact that it's your anniversary, birthday, or wife's birthday. Those are pretty big days where you typically have plans with those closest to you. You don't want to have to be giving that up because you gotta go in and cover for Bill. Maybe it'd be one thing if he was a nice guy and this was a once-in-a-while thing, but he's clearly just taking advantage. You don't owe him anything, and based on how many special days he took from you, I think even he knows that he deserved this. Racist boss refuses to hire any African people, then fires me. So I make him lose $100,000. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So I used to be a consultant for a large technology company. My role was essentially to go in and manage the operations of a project or program in order to make sure it was running smoothly. This particular job was at a large international bank, and tensions were high as the project was failing. We had this program manager who was also my direct manager. Let's call him Nobby. Nobby consistently talked to and treated people like crap. Told people to sort their life out and to stop failing and things like that. Some other examples of his behavior are firing contractors whilst they were on holiday, purposely blacklisting people he had a personal issue with even though their performance was fine, told me not to hire or interview any African people because they were lazy and bad workers, made people work until 2 a.m. multiple times a week, then belittled them for not being in at 6 a.m. Anyway, I did my best as the ops manager to try and stop this happening, or make life at least a little bit easier for the people, but it wasn't working. So I decided to quietly build up a business conduct case in the background whilst this was going on. It got so bad, I submitted the case to legal. One day it was my turn. Nobby decided to fire me in the most spectacular way in front of the client and the other staff, as he couldn't handle me going against him anymore. Except I had submitted a case against him which protected me against retaliation. So I kept my butt on that seat next to him while the investigation continued. He was eventually sacked for everything he did and the legal exposure he caused. Fast forward 2 years. I'm at another large consultancy. Part of my role is to keep an eye on who's being hired. I see Nobby's name come up on a report of incoming hires. I check his CV and it's him. So I block his hire and have them revoke his £100,000 a year offer. Jerk. You know what? I don't blame you one bit. You got out of working with this guy the first time. No way you're gonna let it happen twice. And you're doing everyone else you work with a favor by them never having to know what kind of crap they'd have to deal with. The fact that it's 2 years later and he's still trying to find a solid job tells you something. Maybe word about your report about him got around. Seems like no one wants to work with this guy. At least not for any kind of extended period of time. Entitled lady ruins a good thing for her and all her coworkers. So for background, I worked at a high-end mall, specifically outrageously priced loose leaf tea. I met the owners of the business through my old basketball coach. She married an aspiring businessman who got rich because of his smart investments. Well, one of these investments was this tea shop. This will be important later. We sold a variety of the best quality loose leaf tea from around the world. Although it was mainly just retail, we also made drinks about $5 to $8 depending on the sizes of the cup. Part of our marketing is going by other stores and offering them free tea. Since we had a lot of leftovers from the samples we used that day, towards the end of the day, we'd transfer them in cups and give them out for free to our neighboring stores. This gave us more customers and the employees are usually very grateful, except this one rude lady. We'll just call her RL. She worked at one of the big stores. She struts in one day and began to complain how her department never got the tea. She rambles on and on about how they always get it every Tuesday. She doesn't understand why it's so hard for us to be consistent.
I know you guys always bring us tea, but we didn't get it today.
Yeah, those were just a courtesy from the owner.
I know, so why didn't you bring us tea today? I don't understand why that's so hard to do. It's just tea.
Ma'am, these teas are actually about $12 per 2 ounces. They're not cheap, and we're not allowed to just give them out for free.
Well, I know the owner. She gives me free teas. I want to speak to the manager. You don't know anything. We pay for these teas at the end of the month, and I don't see why you're breaking that contract.
Actually, I am the manager. I know everything that happens with this store. We do not sign those types of contracts. We give out free tea as a courtesy. It's not mandatory. And from now on, I think it's in our best interest to no longer give your store free tea. It's at this moment that she realizes she's ruined it for everyone.
You can't do that. I know the owner.
My old coach actually was in the back at this time since her daughter usually goes to the classes and events held at Microsoft. She slides the door open and walks out to look the rude lady in the eyes.
Finally, a grown-up. Can you tell this kid to stop impersonating a manager and being so rude?
Coach, actually, that's my store manager, and I've never met you before in my life. I think it's best for you to leave. I later on had to relay what happened to my other coworkers, and they couldn't stop laughing. I guess me looking like a teenager doesn't make me look credible as a manager. That was honestly one of the reasons why we stopped giving tea out for free. Jerks got too demanding. Why do entitled people have to go and ruin a good thing? People are being nice to their neighbors and giving you free tea, and you're gonna turn around and start being all demanding? Why can't you just be grateful for what you're being given out of the goodness of someone else's heart? And now, because you couldn't just take what was given to you, you've gone and ruined a good thing for everyone else you work with. I don't understand how it has to come to that point for you to realize that you were being the jerk in this situation. Some people just don't get it till it's too late. Coworker Karen tells everyone I'm sleeping with the managers and owners to get better shifts. Back when I was taking a couple years off school, I worked in a medium-sized upscale restaurant. During my time there, I think I was liked well enough. Ended up dating a coworker and becoming close friends with a couple managers. Now, as anyone who's worked in a restaurant can tell you, being friends with the managers can get you some perks, like free drinks after work, preferential scheduling, better big parties, etc. This infuriated one coworker we'll call Karen. Karen was not well liked, but was honestly a good waiter. Think Naomi from the movie Waiting. Super nice to customers, but once she was out of sight of the dining door, swearing and cursing and talking crap. Karen did not like me. and made it very obvious. She would claim I was sleeping with the managers for better tables, and while it was not true, I did on average get better shifts than most. The rest of the staff noticed but didn't really care since I took 2 crap shifts a week, Sunday night and a Monday double, because my favorite managers and significant other worked those shifts, so we could just cut up, hang out, and would have a couple beers while working. Now Christmas time rolls around and we had 3 event rooms, and everyone wanted the Christmas holiday and work parties. They were always set menu, lots of booze, large auto-grat checks, and you could double to triple a normal night's work off one table. These were coveted tables, so of course Karen would complain every time I got one and she didn't, or my party having a better menu, i.e. more expensive than hers. You could taste her passive aggressiveness in the air when she was around. It got to the point where the owner took over the scheduling to try and even things out. Even this didn't stop her, because obviously I was sleeping with the owner too. Fast forward 8 months and I've enrolled in grad school and will no longer be working at the restaurant. These are the happiest days of Karen's miserable life. My school is in the same town, so I'd still pop over to hang out on Sunday night for a free drink and half-off meal. Not too bad. One night, a couple months later, I come in like normal, but on the end of a Saturday night, both managers, my significant other, and the owner are there, as well as Karen. I'm having my beer when Karen comes over to me. "Oh, hey there, original poster. Didn't recognize you." "Hi there, Karen. How have you been?" "Things have been good. The restaurant's been really busy since you left. Everyone's really happy to come into work since the shifts have gotten even and fair. Besides your significant other, people are in a much better mood after you left." "Oh, really?" "Oh, yes. And there are so many good parties this year, and I'm lined up to get the best ones, as I'm now the head waiter," which wasn't a thing, "since you don't work here anymore." Me, grinning my tail off. "Actually, Karen, I do work here. I came in tonight to see if the owner needed any seasonal help. He does, and since the menu changed and I don't know any of the new dishes, I'm just going to be working parties." At this point, her cheery demeanor that she used in front of customers changes, and she goes fuming off to talk to the owner. I sit back and enjoyed my beer that much more. It was true. I told the owner I could work until school started or the holiday rush died. Since he was short-staffed and wouldn't have to train me on the basics, I started right away and picked up some very nice holiday cash. Luckily, I was never scheduled to work a party with that jerk. You know, a lot of the time being a nice, friendly person goes a long way in the workforce. People are more likely to give you what you want and work with you if you're nice and friendly and easy to get along with. You can be one of the best workers they have, but if you're not a likable person, a lot of the time someone else will still get better treatment than you. This seems to be a lesson that our Karen of this story has not learned. I could understand, given this, why our Karen didn't really like our original poster, but at the end of the day, it's something that she needs to work on and change. Our original poster didn't do anything wrong. Tinder date ghosts me and sends me rude messages calling me fat, so I make sure he has the worst date he's ever had. Due to the well of my friends' definitely not an axe murderer date recommendations drying up, I've turned to that most sacred of modern relationship institutions, online dating. As a very busy person trying to get it on with other very busy people, I prize honesty and directness above all else when it comes to profile creation. I include full body shots in my photos, trying to minimize the use of MySpace angles and selfies, and right at the very top of the summary, caption, or profile that I'm fat. Not curvy, not thick, not lots to love. I'm fat. I'm not ashamed of it, but I also know that weight is a deal breaker for lots of people. I don't want to waste anyone's time. About a year ago, I met Evan via Tinder. We exchanged friendly messages for a few hours one night and agreed to meet up for drinks the following evening. I waited for a full hour past the designated time, and just as I was getting up to leave, the texts start rolling in.
"I can see you sweating from here. How long does it take you to roll out of bed every morning? Is there an earthquake or are you just getting up for more pretzels?"
Really idiotic, juvenile stuff. 4 separate numbers, commenting on things like my clothes, which clued me in that the senders were nearby. This went on for 15 minutes before I finally saw Evan trying to hide at a corner table and giggling with a group of buddies. I made eye contact, saw that he saw me, and then walked out. The text kept up until I blocked the numbers a few hours hours later. I ran into Evan about 3 weeks later. We got on the same elevator, and he tried really hard at being super interested in the emergency phone instructions. I just confronted him, and he admitted that it was just some game that him and his friends play. He knew that I was fat before agreeing to meet up. They all did, because that's what they do. Match up with fat women, then either ghost them or troll them at the meetup. It was also kinda obvious he'd never seen any consequences from this bull, as he was sweating pretty hard and looked more humiliated than I felt. I just said whatever and walked out, expecting to never see him again. About a month ago, some local foodie wrote a great review of the restaurant I own, and we've been slammed ever since. In the past, I stayed mostly in the kitchen, but I've been doing more and more front of house stuff lately, and Valentine's Day, I was working a bit of a split between the two. I saw Evan just as he was pushing in his date's chair. My name isn't on the restaurant, and he didn't see me. I checked the section up at the hostess stand and saw that one of my favorite old-timers, Nan, was going to be his waitress. I went to the bar till, took out $400, put it in her hands and said, "This is going to be your only table for the rest of the night. You're gonna make this the worst date he's ever been on." She spilled every single thing she brought out to the table, all over him. I was waiting for him to blow up on Nan, but he bottled it up, obviously trying to make a good impression on his date. She seemed like a perfectly lovely lady. I told Nan to make sure everything was good for her, but terrible for Evan. She poured ice water on his crotch, she smacked the back of his head with the edge of a tray, spilled soup on his shirt, and dropped every fork he asked for. I personally oversalted his food, used the crap liquor for his drinks, and used flour instead of sugar on his dessert. To be honest, I don't know why he didn't just walk out. He must have really wanted to sleep with this woman. Finally, he cracked, demanded Nan find the manager and bring her out. I was only too happy to emerge from the kitchen with my chef's coat and say what I'm not ashamed to admit I'd been planning out all night. I would have said hi earlier, but I didn't want the earthquake to disturb your dinner. I will savor the look on Evan's face for the rest of my life. He was a little too flummoxed to explain, so I pulled a chair up to the table and introduced myself to his date, Amanda. Told her how I met Evan, showed her some fun old messages. Then I gave her a voucher for a free meal on her next visit and told Evan to get the heck out and never come back. The jerk ended up deleting his Tinder profile. That's a horrible thing to do to people for fun. Like the original poster said, clearly he never had to suffer any kind of consequences from this, cause I doubt he's gonna be doing it anymore after this encounter. But seriously, it takes a group of pretty heartless people to do something like that to someone in the first place. I don't know who you have to be to laugh at someone else's pain, but you're pretty low on the totem pole, much lower than you think the person you're making fun of is. Luckily, our original poster was given the perfect opportunity to strike back, and good on her for taking it. Hopefully this guy did finally learn a lesson regarding all this and will treat people with a little more respect in the future. That might be a little too much to hope for, but let's try and wish the best for people still. I told my brother I don't want him bringing his daughter on our trips anymore. I have 3 brothers and we're all married with kids. Our lives are very busy, so we don't see each other much, which is why twice a year we all go on a fishing trip together and bring some of our kids with us. This is a tradition we've had for more than a decade now, and the kids we bring are those interested, which ended up just being our sons. Except for my brother James and his daughter Celine, who's 17. She was way more interested in fishing than James's other kids were, and he's been bringing her since we started the tradition. It was all cool and dandy when all of our kids were children, but now that they're all teens and older, with the youngest being 15, it got kind of awkward. During our recent trip, my son, who's 15, as well as one of my nephews, who's 16, came to me and my eldest brother and asked us if it was possible to not have Celine come on the next trip with us, because they'd like to have a father-son trip with just us, since they can't really speak freely or behave how they want to behave, because it feels weird having her there. I understood where they were coming from, since most of them are in that awkward phase, and having a girl present when you just want to be rowdy with your cousins can feel very weird. So I discussed it with my eldest brother, and we decided to ask James if it was possible for him to not bring Celine on the next trip, and bring another one of his kids instead so we could have a father-son vacation. James did not take this well at all, and said he'll simply not be coming, even though we explained our reasoning very well to him, and I had my nephew and son tell him how they felt, so he could see their perspective. My oldest nephew heard about what happened, and he made an over-sensationalized post on Facebook calling us dinosaurs. So the story got out to the rest of the family, and opinions are split. However, those that think I'm in the wrong really think I'm in the wrong, and have not been shy about expressing it. I just wanted to listen to my son and nephew and give them the experience they wanted, and not dismiss their feelings and make them feel heard. But now I'm second guessing. Am I the jerk? To me, this one's pretty cut and dry. You're acknowledging your sons and nephews' feelings, but completely disregarding your niece's. All because she's a girl? Do you see the problem here? She's the only kid of his that actually has an interest in coming fishing, and you're gonna leave her out because of her gender. There's nothing stopping the boys from doing whatever they want. As long as they're not waving their privates about, I don't see what the issue is with her being there. And even if she wasn't there, I'm sure you don't really want them doing that. The proper way to handle this would be to talk to your son and nephew and explain that just because she's here doesn't change anything. Instead, you've acknowledged what they're saying and reinforced it, that her being there is a problem or not right for some reason. The whole situation is just totally unfair to her. I'm sorry, you're all being jerks. I accidentally let slip to my niece that her dad has a nipple piercing. I, male 46, have a brother who's 47, and he has a daughter who's 17. My brother and I had a rough childhood, and were pretty wild in our teens and early 20s. We did stuff most people wouldn't want their kids to know about, which is understandable. Well, last night I was over at my brother's. My niece was visibly upset, and I asked what was up. Well, my niece ended up getting her nose pierced without telling either my brother or sister-in-law. While her mom wasn't mad, my brother was pretty ticked. Where we live, you can get most piercings without parental consent at 16. It was just a simple nostril piercing. A little stud, barely noticeable honestly. My niece is a very good kid, gets amazing grades, and is kind and respectful. Honestly, this is probably the most bad thing she's ever done. Well, like I said, my brother's mad about the nose piercing, saying he doesn't want to see that on her face. And my niece was trying to argue that it's not permanent, so he shouldn't care, because she could always take it out in the future. It's not a forever thing. Well, I wasn't thinking and said, you don't really have room to talk considering you had your nipples pierced. My niece's mouth dropped and said that just makes him a hypocrite for getting upset she has her nose pierced. My brother said I'm the biggest jerk for outing him to his daughter, saying something that he didn't want her to know about. I wasn't really thinking, and just said it because that's what I was personally thinking. Now my brother isn't talking to me, so am I the jerk? Honestly, I find this one more entertaining than anything. But in all seriousness, I don't know if you're really a jerk in this situation. It wasn't intentional, and you did technically tell the truth. Probably would have been better if you just kept your mouth shut and minded your own business, but hey, the die's been cast. The daughter's 17, she got her nose pierced, she's a good kid. I don't think it's really that big of an issue. It's become more and more acceptable in today's society. It's not really the mark of the rebel it once was. I can see why dad would be upset, but I'm sure he'll get over it in time. Power-hungry supervisor threatens my chef job for going to the bathroom for too long, so I get him replaced. By me. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. This happened last year. I was about 6 months into a food service job at the time. I worked in my university's cafeteria prepping and serving food to the students. After closing, I took about 45 minutes to finish cleaning up my station and took another 10 to finish up one of my coworkers' sections that she needed a bit of help with. My supervisor had left just after closing to God knows where, leaving the rest of us to our devices as he usually did. He was more the watch and rule type. After I had finished, I took a quick 5-minute trip to the bathroom, as I usually did around this time every day. As I happily walked to the back to assist in helping the others finish so we could all leave, I hear a cough behind me, the sound of the calm before the storm. I ignore it, thinking nothing of it, and go on my way. I hear a more abrupt ahem And I stop and turn on my heel to meet the shift supervisor's cold gaze, his hands crossed over his puffed chest in his regal stance. I give him a questioning look as he looks on, expecting me to read his mind.
A half an hour?
He asks calmly, but with a sour tinge to his tone. Me, confused, I chuckle. Huh? This was apparently the worst thing I could have done.
You were in the bathroom for a half an hour,
he yelled, stomping his royal foot. I was taken aback, as he'd never come at me with a sideways tone before. I thought we were cool, but I should have known better seeing how he treated my coworkers. I was so shocked, I just stood there, staring at him like he grew 3 horns. I didn't feel the need to defend myself in the moment, as I knew the words he was spitting my way were pure BS.
Do you like your job?
He demanded from me. I did not, in fact, like my job. I had trouble holding back my smile at this thought, as he yelled some more things I don't remember, as my ears had gone numb to his screeching at that point. I knew he had no power to fire me, and I hadn't even seen his mug for the past hour. I knew his words had no consequence. I had nothing to say to his tantrum, and as soon as he realized that, he dismissed me. I have trouble egging people on when they're being so irrational, so generally I stay quiet and let them get out their baby fit. I quickly went back to my work and started scheming about how I could get back at this man. Over the next week, I compiled photo evidence of him slacking on the job, serving undercooked food, and statements from my coworkers about their individual experiences where he ridiculed or threatened them. And I took it all straight to my boss that Friday. I laid out all my evidence and my personal encounter, which they were able to check the cameras and identify both of our whereabouts that day and could see who was truly off duty for half an hour. I didn't think much would come of it, as I was a relatively new worker, and honestly, I didn't care about anything that happened to that hellhole. I let it slip from my mind for the weekend. The next Monday, I come in before most and start setting up. After a while, the general manager comes out of the back with the supervisor following her like a puppy, staring at his feet. He walks sheepishly up to me and invites me to sit with him at one of the tables in the cafeteria, where he admits to me that he was in the wrong, shouldn't have yelled at me like that, should be a better leader, and is super duper sorry. All that nonsense. I sat there with the biggest grin on my face as he practically groveled at my feet, begging for forgiveness as his boss watched on. This man that sat so high on his horse for the past 6 months. I watched on in celebration as he then apologized to each of my coworkers individually. Not a week later, he was demoted to a backroom cook, and I'd been given the role of shift supervisor. We never had a problem after that, and he was generally an okay guy. I hope he really did learn his lesson and didn't say all those things just to get it over with. Either way, this was the sweetest revenge of my life. I've since quit that job and work for a company with people who actually know how to respect others as individuals, whether their position is below or above their own. It's nice not to have to work with jerks. Don't take that for granted, my friend. Most people always have to work with at least one person they don't like. But I digress. In this situation, you did exactly what you should have. You got the evidence you needed to go to a superior and report the person that was causing issues. This is the better way to handle it versus a shouting match in the back room. That's not going to get you anywhere. This guy clearly just wanted a show of power, and as a result, had all of his power taken away from him. Let this be a lesson to the other jerks out there in management. Don't go starting problems, cause you don't know how far that employee is willing to go to make a problem for you. Entitled jerk steals my plane seat and refuses to move. This happened to me a while ago, so I won't be able to quote anyone's exact words, but here goes. A little background first. I suffer from anxiety and PTSD from an event indirectly related to my military service. Because of my anxiety, I have a difficult time being in confined spaces, and because of this, I always book an aisle seat on planes and trains. I feel like I have slightly more control of my situation in an aisle seat, and this helps with my anxiety. I rarely have a problem if I'm in an aisle seat. Because of this, I always fly on airlines that let you choose your seat location. I could fly on cheaper airlines that don't let you choose, but I would rather not risk having a full-blown anxiety attack on an airplane. So on this particular day, the first leg of my journey had a minor medical issue with another person, and this person was removed from the plane first by EMTs. So I had a limited time before my connecting flight. I arrived at the gate just before they started boarding, so I quickly went to use the restroom before boarding. I'd rather not use the one on the plane if I can avoid avoid it. By the time I returned, they'd begun boarding and my group had already been called. So I just boarded with the next group. When I got to my seat, there was a man sitting in my seat. I said, "Excuse me, but you're in my seat." He replied that he preferred an aisle seat, but that they were all taken. So he was just gonna take mine and I could have his window seat in the row behind this one. I said no, I had specifically chosen my aisle seat and he needed to move. He refused and asked me what the big deal was, as most people prefer window seats. I said if that's the case, then he should take his window seat. He just picked up a magazine and began to ignore me. A flight attendant came up from the back of the plane to see what the issue was because I was blocking people from finding their seats. I informed her that I was booked in the aisle seat and that I suffer from anxiety, but I'm usually fine if I have an aisle seat. But this man wouldn't get out of my seat. She asked for both of our boarding passes. I gave her mine, but the man said he didn't know where his was, but this was definitely his seat. She looked at my boarding pass and told the man he needed to get out of the seat because it was definitely not his seat because I had the boarding pass for that seat. He kept complaining and refusing until she said if he didn't move, she'd have him removed from the plane. At that point, he finally got up and I was able to take my seat. He then asked the man who had the aisle seat in his row if he would change seats. The man refused. The seat stealer was forced to sit in his window seat for the nearly 5-hour flight. The man and woman who were in the row with him were on the larger side. Not huge, but definitely bigger than average. So I'm sure he felt a little cramped in his window seat. The couple in my row were elderly and both much smaller than the average person. They were delightful seat companions. I enjoyed chatting with them briefly before they both dozed off. I can't believe some of the entitled jerks out there in the world. Seriously, how do you think this is gonna end, my friend? Are you really gonna make me get the flight attendant and have her come over here and sort this out like we're kids in kindergarten? You know this isn't your seat. Just move. You have no right to it. It's not our original poster's fault that all the aisle seats were taken. If it's that important to you, you book the next flight. Don't make it our original poster's problem and everyone who's now lined up behind our original poster trying to get to their seats. Just don't be a jerk. Is it that hard? Entitled Karen rudely brushes me aside while trying to drop off her resume, not realizing that I'm the one in charge of hiring. There was no big scene and no police were called. It was just an interesting story. I was the front desk manager of a hotel. I was in charge of guest relations as well as the front desk staff. I did all the hiring, firing, and training of front desk staff, and my general manager basically just gave me freedom to run my area as I saw fit, intervening only when necessary. On this day, I was alone at the front desk covering for an employee who was running late. My general manager, a woman in her 50s, was standing next to me in dirty paint-covered scrubs, as she'd been helping the housekeeping staff with some minor maintenance that day. I'm a woman of 32 at the time, though I looked considerably younger. So this woman walks in while we're discussing the events of our day and preparing key cards for that evening's arrivals. She's carrying a folder and is pulling out a resume as she approaches the counter. I stop what I'm doing and walk towards her to greet her. "Good afternoon. Welcome to hotel. My name is..." "Oh, hello, dear. You know, it's okay. I have some important business and I need someone who knows what's what around here, okay, dear?" I stood shocked for a moment as she approached my manager at the desk. I walked back to stand next to her. "Hi, my name's Karen. I see online that you're hiring for a front desk agent and I'd like to apply for said position. As you'll see on my resume..." My boss cuts her off at this moment while taking the resume from her hand. "I need to stop you right there. I don't do the hiring for the front desk, but original poster here is the front desk manager and is in charge of scheduling and performing all interviews, and has the final say who gets hired." As she says this, I walk up close to her and she hands me the resume with a smile before walking off. I smile at the lady who's now gone pale and has her mouth open in a weird way. She reminded me of a fish. As I was saying, my name is Original Poster and I'm in charge of hiring. Are you looking for full-time or part-time? We had a brief conversation about her skills and experience, during which she couldn't look at me and I sent her on her way. I never called her back for an interview, not because of her actions, but because I had more qualified applicants to consider. I did pass on her resume to the head housekeeper who had heard the story, and she decided to call her for an interview for the heck of it. The jerk refused the offer. Talk about making a good first impression, right? I'm sure this happens a lot with anyone who looks younger and is in management. A lot of the time, they're expecting someone to look at least 40 to be able to give them a job. God forbid they have to treat you with any kind of respect beyond that point. Karen learned real quick who was in charge though, and it didn't work out so good for her. Maybe next time, just treat everyone with respect. Just a crazy thought. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. My father insists I empty my savings account and give it to my brother. So this happened a couple years ago, but it still just hurts. My dad and I have never really seen eye to eye. He grew up with no sisters and an awful mother figure, and none of his friends have daughters, only sons. I don't blame him for struggling to raise a girl when he had absolutely no reference point, but he didn't need to show blatant favoritism towards my brother. I've always been the black sheep a little. My parents and younger brother have always been this nice little trio. My brother is a mummy's boy and dad dotes on him regardless. He's 4 years younger than me. I'm 18 and he's 14. I've struggled to find my place in the family. Even my standing as which sibling I am is uncertain, because my dad accidentally impregnated a girl at 19, had my half-brother, and I was born 14 years later. My oldest brother was in my life enough that I don't feel like the oldest child, but not enough to feel like the middle. I'm just dad's retrial at parenting, and my brother is the beneficiary of all his practice. Now, aside from that little rant, the actual story. My brother and I are very musical. I play a multitude of instruments, he just plays saxophone. And he's good, always has been. He suffered classic younger sibling syndrome. We were in a much better financial position when I began playing clarinet that I got a really good beginner intermediate model that I still play today. When he started about 4 years ago, things had gotten tight, so he had to rent his from the local concert band, and it wasn't great. Originally it was fine because my parents didn't want to invest in something he might not commit to, but he did and loved it. At this point I was 15, and I'd been working for 2 years at a local sports club, earning less than minimum wage because I was underage, working my butt off and saving a pretty hefty percentage of my income. My father, who felt responsible for my job since he knew the owner, but I'd actually gotten the job myself, decided he was entitled to my savings, about $500 at the time. His exact words were, "We could use your savings to buy your brother a better saxophone." God, it crushed me. First of all, you cannot get a sax better than the one he has for only $500. Secondly, what kind of father asks one child to give up practically 2 years of work for another? It made me feel like he had more pride or hope for his son, that his daughter's savings should contribute towards it, even though at the time I was saving for a student-level clarinet, and he knew that. He never offered to pay the money back or anything, and thankfully, after I asked Mum what she thought of it and she lost her mind, it was never brought up again. Though he has asked for my savings since then, and I've said no. I can't wait to move out and get away from these jerks next year. Yeah, that is a crappy situation. I'm sorry you've been made to feel that way. I'd like to think that I'm sure your parents love you very much and don't necessarily prefer your brother more. Your dad might feel more comfortable with him because that's what he's used to. He's used to guys. Like you said, you don't exactly blame him for the situation, but at the same time, he needs to be putting in the effort to give you that love and nurturing. It really does sound like he's playing favorites here, and that's not right, no matter which way you look at it. That's your money that you worked very hard for. Your brother's not entitled to it just because he wants something new, and it sounds like he wouldn't even get something better than what he has. So I really don't know what your dad is thinking here. He's just shooting himself in the foot when it comes to yours and his relationship. My entitled sister-in-law got upset when I told her that I wouldn't be staying for the whole wedding. My wife's sister, my sister-in-law, is getting married on a Saturday this summer. I have a shaky relationship with sister-in-law, as she jokes about me during family events. Humor is one thing, but these tend to always be negative jokes about my character. Because of this, I've always thought that she doesn't like me. I was waiting for her to possibly ask me to play some role in the wedding, since my wife is maid of honor and our only son is ring bearer. The couple did not ask me to play a role in any way. I asked what time I had to be at the wedding and I was told noon. I work a 12-hour shift on the wedding day, so I decided to just take 6 hours off so I could be there for noon, but still had to be up at 4 the next day for work. I found out from my wife that my sister-in-law and future brother-in-law are extremely upset and have been intentionally ignoring me since they found out. They told my wife they expected me to take the entire day off. I work 12 hours every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Sunday because they think of me as a brother and assumed I would want to be there for the rehearsal, dinner, morning of the wedding, and wedding/reception. Them not asking me to play a role, especially with my wife and our son having roles, confirmed for me that they don't like me. So I felt no obligation to take the morning of the wedding off, of which I have no part in. I work 12-hour shifts, and taking one day off really cuts into my available paid time off. So this played a factor in my decision as well. I'm in no way upset for not having a role, and my decision is in no way retaliatory. It's not my wedding, so I don't make the calls. It doesn't bother me. My wife defended me and told my sister-in-law how they've always made me feel in this conversation they had when all this came up, but neither sister-in-law nor future brother-in-law have tried to talk to me. So, am I the jerk? Honestly, people have lives. It's not your fault that you only get 3 days of work a week, and you don't want to lose a whole day of that because of a wedding that you're not 100% involved in. That being said, I would think if your wife and kid are there that you would just want to be there for the day anyway. Even if it's not to help out the couple, to help out your wife and be there for your son. At least enjoy the night out with them. You say it has nothing to do with the way she treats you, but I do think there is some underlying resentment there. At least that's the vibe I pick up as a third party, that you are letting this influence your decision at least a little bit. Not that I can say I blame you, but just need to be real with yourself. My girlfriend tried to steal my dinner after I had already bought her dinner. I respectfully declined. My girlfriend, 25, and I, 29, live in New York City, and there's a popular app where you buy leftover restaurant food. Restaurants advertise surprise bags at a reduced price in order to reduce food waste. The customer doesn't know what they're getting until they pick the food up, but the cost is at least 3 times lower than the normal price menu. For example, if an entree is usually $24, the restaurant is allowed to charge $8 at most for it. These are hit or miss. Sometimes you get exactly what you want at a greatly reduced price, but sometimes you get something that you otherwise wouldn't have picked from the menu. I ordered a surprise bag from a barbecue place that I was picking up on the way home yesterday. I texted my girlfriend asking if she wanted one, but she said no. She wasn't in the mood for barbecue. However, there was an Indian restaurant right next door that also had surprise bags available on the app, so she ordered one of them. The barbecue was $12 and the Indian food was $10. When I get home, I unpack the meals to see what we got. I was psyched about my bag. Since I paid $12, I knew the value had to be at least $36. But honestly, the platter looked a lot more expensive. This was a hit. Keep in mind that we live in the West Village, which is the most expensive neighborhood in the most expensive city in the United States. So $36 for one meal is pretty typical. There were burnt ends, ribs, pulled pork, baked beans, potato salad, bread, onions, and pickles. My girlfriend, however, was less lucky. Her surprise bag only had 6 different types of soup, half of them being variations on cauliflower soup. She was disappointed to say the least. She asked if we could share my barbecue, and I said no. I'm hungry. I offered to buy you some already and you said no, so I'm gonna devour it. She got mad and called me a jerk. I told her if she didn't want soup, she should have ordered something specifically instead of using the surprise bag app. I then told her to just order something off a food delivery app. She said she didn't want to spend the money. Another bit of context is I make a lot more than her and pay all of our rent. I know she's running a bit of a lean financial picture right now. I then tell her that if she doesn't want to pay for delivery, I'll walk to the bodega on our street and can buy her something there. Another bit of context is that we live on a 4th floor walk-up with no elevator, and she broke her leg in a car accident a month ago, so it can be tough for her to get around. She says that the grill is probably already off there, and all she wants is a hot meal. I tell her she has soup. Anyway, she thinks I'm the jerk. But in my defense, 1, I offered to buy her barbecue to begin with, which she declined. 2, she picked out her own food and I grabbed it for her on the way home. 3, when she wasn't satisfied, I suggested 2 solutions, either ordering something from an app or going to a bodega. So, Reddit, am I the jerk? See, normally I would say no based on the title and everything. But like you said, she's got a bum leg right now and she's having a really hard time getting around. I don't blame her for not being happy with the soup, but she also needs to understand that she rolled the dice on that one, which I'm sure she does. She probably understands all of this, and probably also knows it's unreasonable to ask for some of your food. Regardless, that doesn't make her want it any less in that situation. I can't say I blame her for asking. If it were me in that case, I would have just given her some of my food, because I want her to be happy at the end of the day. But maybe you guys have a different dynamic. I don't know. I caught a hotel employee scamming a guest with credit card fraud, so I reverse scam him and get him fired. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I worked the night shift as a receptionist at a hotel in Norway, and most nights are spent watching Netflix and playing games. Last summer was really slow, and I also worked a lot extra, so I ran out of stuff to watch and games to play. One night, I got a mail from Scooter. He wanted to book a room for almost 20 days. I just had to send him the price and confirmation that we had rooms available, and he would send me his credit card info for me to pre-charge. Normally, we just delete these kinds of mail, but I was bored out of my mind. So I respond with an offer of around $2,000 for the entire stay. I also made sure to inform him that he could cancel for free up until the day of arrival. This is probably the most common fraud attempt in the hotel and travel industry. Unlike most businesses, we're able to charge credit and debit cards with only the card number and expiration date. No need for a PIN code, CVC, or other authorization methods. Our software also allows us to deposit money directly to local and international bank accounts by using the card number. Because of this, jerks like Scooter will try to prepay with stolen or skimmed cards, but then cancel the booking and ask us to refund the amount to a different card. A couple hours after sending him the offer, he responded with a Visa number and told me to charge him as soon as possible. I checked the card with our validation software, and to my big surprise, it did not belong to Scooter. If validation succeeds, it will return the card owner's name 90% of the time. I sent him a new mail stating that the card was declined because of insufficient funds. He quickly replied and gave me a new card to try. Guess what? This one didn't belong to Scooter either. Wasn't even the same person as the first card. By checking the BIN codes, the 6 first digits, I found which banks had issued the cards, not even issued in the same country. My plan was just to call the banks and inform them of the attempted scam, but there were still several hours before I could go home, so I decided to mess with Scooter a bit more. Sent him a reply that the second card went through, and also the reference number for his stay at our hotel. As expected, a couple hours later, Scooter sent a mail canceling the order, and asked if we could refund the money to a different card as he had lost his wallet and deactivated the card he paid with. This card was issued to a Polish bank. Not sure why, but Polish bank accounts are often used by people who want to launder money from bitcoins and drugs. You can buy a legit card for around $500 that is registered to some guy or girl in Poland from the darknet. At this point, Scooter was probably pretty happy about the $2,000 he would soon receive. I replied that it was no problem for me to transfer the money to a different card, as long as it was valid. How fun would it have been to cancel his own card, so that he had to spend $500 for a new one? Not fun enough. In the last mail, I wrote that he could send me the card number, but that our email server would go down for maintenance in a few minutes, so my boss would do it on Monday. It was now Saturday morning, so enough time for the charged bank to call us and reverse the transfer. If he needed the money right away, I told him to call the hotel before I ended my shift at 7. He called almost immediately, and I wrote down the card number and his phone number, told him I transferred the money, and that it would be in his account by 12. My shift ended and I went home with all the info Scooter had provided. I wanted to see if I could find out who he was. And of course this idiot had an open Facebook profile that I found using his phone number. He even listed his address and employer. Looked a bit like the artist Scooter, but with an even more messed up face and spiky hair full of gel. He lived somewhere outside of London, in an area I would describe as a British trailer park, where the houses were nice at some point, but the owners had spent £0 on maintenance since it was built. Trash everywhere and broken windows that were boarded up or fixed by sealing holes with garbage. Now to the fun part. According to his Facebook profile, Scooter worked at a hotel. This meant that he would have access to card information from guests that booked booked through sites like booking.com. I called the manager of the hotel and told him that there was reason to believe that one of his employees was trying to commit credit card fraud and that the card numbers could belong to their guests. I gave him the name of the people who owned the cards Scooter was trying to pay with, and to no surprise, both had stayed at the hotel. I told him it was Scooter, and the manager just exploded in anger. Not 100% sure what he said because he was screaming so loud, but I think Scooter wasn't a normal employee. Apparently, he worked there through some kind of government training program or something. After talking to the manager, I called both Visa and MasterCard International and told them about Scooter's little business venture. Apparently, it's pretty easy to check if there are more cards that have been involved in fraud, where the cards have also been used at Hotel Scooter. With his Polish deposit account info, they would be able to pin it on Scooter if he had been successful in scamming anyone, and sue him for the stolen amount. The police also called me later to get a statement regarding the whole situation, so I know that the manager reported it to the police. Not sure what happened to Scooter, but according to that jerk's Facebook profile, he no longer works at the hotel, or anywhere else as far as I can tell. You know what they say, not all heroes wear capes. Our original poster is definitely a hero in this story. Honestly, I wish there was more people like this. People that understand what's going on and have the ability to do something about it. My question is, why does he only do this when he's bored? You could be doing this all the time if it's a known scam, and saving a lot of people a lot of grief. But hey, I'm gonna give you credit for this one at least. Just see if maybe you can get a few more while you're at it. I called 911 to get out of a ticket. When I was 19, I was running late to work in my tiny piece of crap economy car and on fumes of gas. I didn't come to a complete stop on a right turn. Lights go off behind me, so I pull over. I know I've barely got any gas at all and was almost to a gas station, hence why I rolled through the stop a little, trying to not have the car die. At the time, around 1995, a new digital phone had come out called VoiceStream, now T-Mobile, and their whole thing was the phones were digital and not cellular. They were the first phones with caller ID, and one of the big things the salesman had said over and over was since it was digital, the signal couldn't be triangulated or traced. Not that I cared, but it stuck in my mind. Well, I give the cop my license, registration, and insurance card, and I got an idea. I knew if I was late to work, I was going to lose my job, and they were super strict there. So I get an idea, and right after I hand the papers to the cop and he's walking back to his cruiser, I called 911 and tell the operator I saw a guy with what looked like a shotgun walk into a 7-Eleven that was about 2 blocks away. I confirmed the address, then I hung up. About 30 seconds later, the cop comes sprinting to my car and hands me all my stuff and rushes away saying, "Come to a complete stop next time," then peels off in the direction of the store. I pushed my car to the gas station that I'd almost made it to and felt pretty pleased with my ingenuity. I know it was a jerk move, but ain't nobody got time for that. While this is a kind of funny story, I can't say I exactly approve. 911 is not to be used for that kind of thing. You got away with it because it was back in the day and they couldn't tell who called. But even so, you're potentially taking away from somewhere else that those officers need to be. There's a reason there's a big fine for misusing 911. Seriously, don't do this, guys. This Karen thought she could police the internet. This is indeed as weird as it sounds. Apparently, I'm not allowed to have an opinion. 2 days ago, I received in the post, mail to Americans out there, a letter from my work. A letter with a first-class stamp. A letter that had the words private and confidential written upon it. One does not receive such letters from where I work unless you've done something either very, very right or very, very wrong. As far as I'm aware, I had done neither, so I was unsure to what I owed the privilege of receiving such correspondence. I opened the letter to try to discern its purpose, and what I'd done to receive it. It was a letter telling me I had a disciplinary hearing today due to a social media comment. Excuse me? I hadn't mentioned anything about my job in literal months, and they didn't specify in the letter what it was that I had said. So I had to wait. I get anxiety bad, and I have a heart condition. I got to deal with not eating properly and chest pains for 2 whole days from the stress of this letter. And since I live with my mother, she also knew. I was allowed to bring her to the meeting with me too, but she's as anxious as me, so she barely slept since the letter arrived. Today at 10 a.m. is when the meeting took place. We started work at 4 a.m. So I had to survive 6 hours at work with the chest pains and the not knowing. I got in there and my manager was absolutely lovely. The comment that got me dragged into the office, I'd stated that I find a rainbow shirt designed by Harvey Price, disgraced glamour model Katie Price's disabled son, is hideous. And some jerk took offense to this. This entitled petty cow decided to find my profile, check my place of work, and make a complaint to head office in an attempt to get me fired. All because I hold a different opinion to her. I'm sorry for not bowing and scraping at the feet of Harvey Price, but I'm not going to call his design beautiful just because he's disabled. My manager basically laughed and told me to take my workplace off my profile and said words to the effect of, "Had she complained in our branch instead of to the head office, she'd have been laughed out of the building. Stupid Karens." I don't understand why she made this so personal. You're allowed to have an opinion on fashion, and I'm sorry if there's something around the designer here or whatever. I don't know anything about that, but you can still have an opinion of the piece itself. It's a little crazy that this woman would go out of her way like this. My employer literally ghosted me. So I've been working for a food shop for about 3 years now. The place is an absolute madhouse. This past year, we've had 7 general managers and double that for the amount of associate employees to roll through. The turnover rate is ridiculous. That being said, I'm the only employee to know how to do everything at that store because I've been there so long. Or at least I was. I went home about a month and a half ago for fall break. I'm a college student whose hometown is out of state. I told the new manager Josh, who started a week before I left, the date that I would be back. Our fall break is Wednesday to Friday and then the weekend. During the break, I was kicked out of our group chat, and I also noticed our employee app was saying that I wasn't registered to a company anymore. So I texted our general manager. No answer. Then I text one of my fellow shift managers, who had been there for about 3 months at the time. He says Josh let me go because he felt I didn't respect him as the general manager and belittled him by always telling him what to do, aka training him. Who ghosts their most experienced employee instead of firing them to their face? Or even over text? Being that I had put 3 years into this company and actually very much enjoyed my job and the yearly raises that I had earned, I was livid. I felt disrespected that the dude didn't even have the guts to answer my text. I thought about going to the store and trashing it. The idiot didn't collect my keys to the store, and I know they wouldn't have changed the alarm code, but I didn't want to be legally accountable. So I got a new job and had to take a slight pay cut, but I worked my way up fast and became a shift manager again. And now I'm department manager, working at a local grocer. As revenge, I've hired the entire staff from my old job. Being that I know how lazy Josh was, he wouldn't have learned how to do anything himself, and just relied on what I had taught my other shift managers. He's gone from a staff of 3 knowledgeable managers and 5 reliable associates to 0. He's gonna be scrambling for new hires, and might even have to shut down the store for a couple weeks until he finds some. I only wish I could see it for myself. What the heck? Seriously? You train this guy and he feels you're telling him what to do, so he fires you, but doesn't actually fire you, just kind of remove you from the paperwork? I'm sorry. Who promoted this guy to a manager? Who made that decision? I think that's the person you need to be talking to. Maybe they're the reason why there's such a high turnover if they're hiring idiots like this guy. Either way, sounds like you're way better off now and a lot happier. So good for you. My dad's new entitled girlfriend is trying to cut him off from the family. So I'm a 30-year-old female with a 9-year-old son. I've had an extremely close relationship with my dad my entire life. He's always been my best friend. I have my own home and job and life, but we talk multiple times a day, and he's very involved with my son. That's just how it's always been. So he started dating someone a year ago, and I won't lie, I was not a fan from the beginning. I recognize that some of this may be some subconscious jealousy because he's been single most of my life. But seriously, she's the worst. Very controlling, moved in after just a month, taking over his money, finding fault in all of his relationships other than theirs. She instigates arguments every chance she gets, and somehow I'm always the bad guy, just because we're around. She slowly made it to where my son and I see less and less of my dad. Then she texted me one weekend and told me that I need to stop coming to his house on Sunday nights, which has been our family dinner for as long as I can remember. Apparently because she has to work Monday mornings. Mind you, I grew up in this house, and I was definitely snippy with my response. Mostly just telling her it wasn't her place to tell me that. Now my dad won't allow me in his home until I apologize to her. This has been about a month ago, and he wants my son to come spend the night and he misses him, but I can't come inside. He's spent the night regularly his entire life, but now I'm not even allowed to bring him in and get him settled. I just drop him in the driveway. Am I the jerk for not wanting my kid somewhere where I'm not welcome? I'm getting mixed responses from friends and family. This definitely sounds like she's trying to worm her way in and control things. There were never any issues before her. You've acknowledged that you may have some suppressed jealousy or something there, but either way, I don't think you've done anything to deserve this kind of treatment. Her telling you that you're not to come over on Sunday nights for family dinner anymore is not her place. Like you said, that's a conversation that should be had with your dad. I don't blame you for snapping on her. And you know this retaliation is coming from her and not your father. That there was a conversation behind closed doors and she's the one telling him to do this. I really wish I had an easy answer for you. It sucks that your son's the one to suffer from spending time with his grandfather. I wouldn't want that to be the result here. Either way, I think you should let the kids stay over, but still try and mend relationships in some way. Maybe smack your father in the face and get him to wake up a bit. My son is terrified of his brother's girlfriend because she looks like his old bully. My son Keith, who's 16, was bullied when he was a kid. It was bad, and the school sucked. It only stopped when he left the school. We live in a pretty small town, and everyone kinda looks the same. Super tan with brown hair or blonde. The bully in question used to dye their hair fun colors like purple and pink. That's not really a thing here since it's considered improper. Think small old town with a lot of judgy grandmas. He went to therapy for a long time and we all thought he was good. Now his older brother went to college and he has a girlfriend named Cindy. She's a sweetheart, but her hair is dyed pink. She's slim built also and she kinda looks like the old bully due to the hair, but it's clearly a different person. My son cannot deal with it. We insisted he goes back to therapy, but he skips the lesson or doesn't talk about it. He treats Cindy like a leper. The final straw today was a small get-together barbecue and Cindy came. She asked if anyone wanted a drink. We gave her our orders and when she asked Keith, he ignored her. She rolled her eyes and went to get everyone a drink. She came back and Keith made a comment of her being too good to get him a drink also. She replied with, "Excuse me?" and he repeatedly called her a skank. I grabbed him and pulled him aside and basically told him to get over it, that she isn't his bully and this is pathetic. I apologized to Cindy and told that little jerk to go home. He told our family that I chose her over him, and he's very clear that he thinks I'm the jerk. No, I'm 100% with you. Just because this person has the same color hair as someone who used to be mean to you back in school doesn't mean you get to treat them with that level of disrespect. I honestly don't care if you have issues. You need to get out of your own frickin' head and start treating people like other people. That is completely unfair to treat someone like that based on some preconceived notion on your side. I'm sorry, this one really just ticks me off. I told my fiance she looked weird on our wedding night. I'm a 32-year-old male and I've dated Sarah, 29, for over 2 years. I love her to death and she means the world to me. Also, she's a person who's comfortable with her skin and doesn't use a lot of makeup, which I really adore about her. And we always tell the truth to each other no matter what. Yesterday was our wedding, and the moment I saw her there, I was shocked that she used a huge amount of makeup, that I barely recognized her without seeing her voice. She saw my facial expression that I was acting a little out of the ordinary, and she asked me what was wrong. I told her that it's nothing, but she looked a little weird with all that makeup in her face. She tried to laugh it off and started talking to her other friends. To be honest, at that moment, I really didn't think I'd said something wrong or anything, especially since she didn't say anything. However, when we went home, she started to give me the cold shoulder treatment. I asked her what's wrong, and she said it's nothing and she doesn't feel well and is tired. To be honest, I think she's hiding something, and that got me wondering if what I said may be the reason. So, am I the jerk? You know, I wouldn't think this would need to be said, but you said your bride looked weird on your wedding night. Yeah, you're the jerk. You could have chosen another way to say it. You could say, "I'm not used to seeing you with makeup on," but you chose the word weird. Of course she's gonna feel a little hurt by that. I get that maybe you didn't mean weird in that way, but this is your first time seeing her on your wedding day. It's supposed to be a big moment where you tell her how beautiful she is and she's the best she's ever looked, but you turned around and said that she looked weird. Intentional or not, I'm gonna have to kinda go with you being the jerk on this one. My entitled mother wants to trade in the ring my dead grandmother left me just so she can get herself one. My grandma passed away when I was 11. Before doing so, she bought me an expensive 24-karat gold ring. I don't wear it as it no longer fits, but I kept it because of sentimental value. My mom, who's 50, just came to me holding the ring and said, "I'm gonna trade this in." And I said, "What?" She said she wants her own ring and will trade mine in towards the cost. I said, "Wait, are you telling me that you're trading in my ring from my grandma to get yourself something?" She said yes, because when she dies, she'll leave all of her rings to me as my inheritance. I said it is not okay by me. She said she'll do it anyway. She doesn't see my point at all, as the gold will come back to me anyway. She never asked if she could. She just told me, as she doesn't see it as an issue. This is not okay with me at all, and I told her so. Am I the jerk for telling her that this is completely out of order? No, you're not a jerk for wanting to keep your own personal belongings, especially something that has a sentimental value like that attached to it. I'm not sure where she gets off thinking that that's hers to just trade in. It would be one thing if she asked you and you said no, but she's just saying she's gonna do it, which is just a complete lack of respect. This woman needs to learn some boundaries.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.